Hokage. In the ninja world, Otsutsuki tremble in fear. Chapter 1. The smoke is vast and the water is rugged. A figure appeared on the calm lake. It looked like a child because he was only about 1 meter tall. He had 6 whiskers on his face and his thin face was full of indifference, but his eyes were extremely bright and his sky-blue pupils revealed depth. The yellow hair was reflected in the water, and suddenly a small fish broke this seemingly peaceful picture. Brush. Suddenly, a wooden stick came stabbing towards the water. It was sharpened into a very sharp point. Soon the surface of the lake was covered with blood. The fish that was jumping just now was suddenly stabbed by the sharpened stick. It struggled violently for 2 seconds, and its breath of life began to weaken and finally disappeared. It's a decent size. Looks like I can have another good meal. It was the boy who was standing by the water just now. The boy's name was Uzumaki Naruto, and the place he was in was called Konoha Village. Suddenly a voice sounded in his mind, fishing proficiency +10. Naruto was no longer surprised by the voice ringing in his mind. When he came to this world, it seemed as if he had obtained the ability that hard work is rewarded by heaven. As long as he did it, he could gain proficiency or other aspects of anything. Take fishing for example. It seems that this includes a very small bonus to strength and agility, but the voice in my head didn't prompt it. In fact, he is not the original Uzumaki Naruto in this world, but he doesn't know whether he is his second life or a rebirth through possession of another body, because when he just became conscious, what echoed in his mind was the earth-shaking Nine-Tails rebellion. He still clearly remembered a red-haired woman whispering in his ear, telling him to follow the 3 prohibitions of ninja. He knew this woman, the princess of the Whirlpool country, his current mother, Uzumaki Kushina, the wife of the 4th Hokage and the previous Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. He was sure that the reason he traveled through time was mainly because of his innate powerful soul talent. It was impossible for a child to possess such a powerful soul power, or it could be said that the souls of both had merged into one. This instantly gave him a sense of belonging to this place. It also made Naruto shed tears unconsciously when he heard the woman's words. Listening to the woman's sincere voice, as an orphan in his previous life, he rarely experienced the preciousness of family affection, but all of this was ruined. But as a baby at the time, he was almost sleepy, and when he came to his senses, the Nine-Tails rebellion had already passed. His old name no longer had any meaning, he was now called Uzumaki Naruto. The life that followed was even worse than he had imagined. He thought the original novel had already portrayed a horrible state of affairs, but the reality was far more cruel than he had imagined. He did not receive any real treatment as the son of a hero, and even the news that he was the son of the 4th generation was blocked. When Naruto was a child, he was left to a nanny. At some point, rumors of a demon fox started spreading in the village. The terrifying thing was that his appearance soon became well known, and he became a demon fox that everyone in the villagers wanted to kill. The nanny abused him in every way, and Anbu, who was actually protecting him and monitoring him in secret, turned a blind eye to it, and even revealed hints of hatred and murderous intent towards him, but quickly restrained himself. As for why Naruto knew that, it was actually thanks to Naruto's powerful mental power. After 2 lives as a human, Naruto's mental power was much stronger than in the original. This allowed him to awaken a talent that very few people in the Uzumaki clan could awaken, the Kagura Mind's Eye. This is the strongest perception talent among the Uzumaki clan. Naruto can easily sense the outside world's probes and the Anbu hiding around him. And at the age of 3, Naruto, with his ability that hard work pays off, took the initiative to apply to live alone. This might have been an unthinkable thing in the previous life, but in this world where life is worthless and even 6-year-old children have to go to the battlefield, nothing is impossible. After a long and emotional speech, the 3rd generation agreed to Naruto's request. People in the ninja world have better physical fitness, and their body cells are several times more than those of people in previous lives. When Naruto was 3 years old, the 3rd generation sent people to teach Naruto literacy and some basic knowledge. Under Naruto's deliberate words, he wanted to get the chakra training method. He knew that only strength could allow him to survive. However, the 3rd generation did not agree, because the body was too small, and refining chakra too early would squeeze the body's potential. Naruto thought about it and decided not to say anything, because he did not want to squeeze the potential too early. Although the life in Konoha was full of malice towards him in the early stage, the danger was not very great. And the 3rd generation would not deceive him in this regard. Relying on the ability of God's reward for hard work, Naruto also possesses strength far beyond that of his peers, and is not bullied like in the original work. Naruto hears a voice in his mind whenever he does something, and he has gotten used to its presence over the years. When Naruto runs, a reminder sound will sound in his mind: physical strength +2, strength +1, physical fitness +1. This also made Naruto more enthusiastic about running, but the villagers were very malicious towards him, and Naruto did not want to go to the village, so he went to the woods behind the mountain. In Anbu's eyes, this is a very active boy, but also very strong. Naruto was very excited while running. The continuous feeling of power in his body made him feel very safe. This might be the cheat for his survival, although he was not as systematic as his colleagues in the legend who traveled through time and space and could defeat everything in seconds. Naruto is already very satisfied with completing a task from time to time, winning a prize from time to time, and reaching the peak of his life early. After all, with the physique of the Uzumaki clan, plus a large power bank in his body, plus his current ability that hard work pays off, as long as he doesn't commit suicide, he will reach the peak of his life sooner or later. However, Naruto discovered that the ability of God rewards hard work is not without limits. It mainly depends on him to do it in order to get the bonus. Doing it once is equivalent to the gains that others can get after doing it 10 or even dozens of times. Naruto also tried to silently call for the system interface or something, but obviously, there was nothing, except for a prompt tone that only he could hear. There was nothing. However, it also allowed Naruto to acquire physical fitness far beyond that of children of the same age. In order to gain more growth, Naruto tried to do many things, but in the eyes of others, he was considered to be a more active type. Anbu also reported Naruto's reaction to the third Hokage. The third Hokage did not doubt anything, but just sighed that Naruto inherited the vitality of his mother Uzumaki Kushina, and was worthy of the physique of the Uzumaki clan. The third Hokage would often appear beside Naruto to ask about his well-being. Whenever this happened, Naruto would act very happy. Of course, it was half true and half false. It was true that Naruto would always take the opportunity to ask the third generation for living expenses. My monthly living expenses are only 1500 yuan. What can I do with this little money? How much does a bowl of Ichiraku ramen cost? 60 taels, but it is really worth it. As for other places, Naruto had no chance to buy food at all. The uncle from Ichiraku Ramen and his daughter Ayame were the few people who had no ill will towards him. The current Naruto is not the same Naruto as before. He knew how much money the fourth Hokage had when he was alive. Although he didn't know the exact amount, it was definitely a lot. But now it has all been taken away by Konoha or the third generation, and it is not even enough to support his own life every month. Even though it was just to show his presence in front of him from time to time, Naruto knew what the third Hokage was planning. He often preached the will of fire in front of him, trying to play the family card with him, and finally holding his trump card of 9 taels Jinchuriki tightly in his hand. During his interactions with the third generation, Naruto relied on the power of hard work to improve his acting skills to a very high level. But I didn't expect that this old guy from third generation was actually a cunning person. Every time Naruto asked for money, he would refuse and always bring some food and small things to Naruto in order to make Naruto grateful. If the original Naruto really believed that the third Hokage was really good to him, he would probably shed a few tears and say, "Grandpa, third generation is the best to me." But there is no way that Naruto could be fooled now. He is all in disguise, which makes the third generation very satisfied, thinking that they can control Naruto, the 9 taels Jinchuriki. As for why Naruto behaved like this, it was mainly to beware of Danzo. Naruto knew that Danzo had never given up on recruiting Uzumaki Naruto into the route in the early stage. If Naruto showed dissatisfaction with the third Hokage in the early stage, or was very indifferent, if Naruto did not meet the expectations of the third generation, it might really allow Danzo to succeed. After all, he had to ensure the absolute loyalty of 9 taels Jinchuriki to the village. In the early stage, the third Hokage could be regarded as Naruto's protective umbrella. When he was 4 years old, Naruto again asked the third Hokage to learn the method of chakra refinement. This time the third generation did not refuse, because at this time basically the big families had already begun to teach the younger generations in the clan to practice. And in the third generation's mind, teaching Naruto to become a ninja would surely deepen Naruto's feelings for them. However, apart from teaching Naruto training, the third generation did not teach him anything else. But Naruto was already very satisfied. By mastering the method of refining chakra, he had already mastered the key to power. After teaching Naruto, the third Hokage returned to the Hokage building and looked at the prosperous scene outside the window with a smile on his face. This is his era. He is the greatest Hokage. Suddenly, the third generation seemed to have thought of something and took out a crystal ball. Suddenly, some pictures appeared on the crystal ball, which turned out to be a women's bathhouse. Looking at the pictures inside, the third Hokage Yuan Fei Hiruzen's face couldn't help but turn red. Clang! The sound of a door opening violently was heard, and the third generation quickly closed the screen on the crystal ball. When they saw the person coming, the third generation said with a slightly angry look, "Danzo, why didn't you knock on the door? Question mark, question mark, question mark. Haven't I always been like this? Hiruzen, hand Nine Tails Jinchuriki over to me, and I will train him to be a ninja who is absolutely loyal to Konoha." Danzo slammed his hands on the table and spoke loudly. "Danzo, Naruto will never be handed over to you, so forget it." The third generation sternly rejected Danzo. "Hiruzen, you must know that I am doing all this for Konoha. Just hand Nine Tails Jinchuriki over to me and I will train him into a qualified weapon of war." Danzo stared at the third Hokage with sharp eyes. "He's Minato's child, don't forget that. Danzo, don't forget, I'm the Hokage." Third generation looked at Danzo and said in a deep voice, "HMPH, you're going to regret this, Hiruzen." Danzo looked at the third Hokage deeply, then turned away. "That's right, close the door." The third generation's voice suddenly came, causing Danzo to freeze for a moment. Snort. With a cold snort, Danzo left without closing the door. After walking out of the Hokage building, Danzo's heart was already filled with anger. "Hiruzen, I will definitely become Hokage. Only I can lead Konoha to glory. Just wait and see." On the other hand, after learning the chakra refining technique, Naruto was ecstatic and couldn't wait to experiment. To Naruto's surprise, his ability of diligence is also effective for refining chakra. Chakra +3, chakra +5. I just tried it according to the third generation's explanation. According to the third generation, if you can refine chakra within a day, you have a talent for cultivation, and if you can refine chakra within a few hours, you are a genius. And Naruto, with his ability of God's reward for hard work, was able to extract chakra in one go, which was incredible. After refining chakra a few more times, Naruto stopped refining chakra because the chakra scroll given by the third Hokage stated that chakra should not be over-extracted. It also stated that the maximum number of refinements per day was 10, which was of course based on his current age. However, Naruto stopped after a few times. Because he had already been blessed with a lot of chakra by God, and given the physique of the Uzumaki clan, there was no need to refine too much chakra. Too abnormal chakra would arouse suspicion. The most important thing now is to control the chakra in your body as much as possible. Naruto tried to gather the chakra in his body into his hands, but it was not as easy as he imagined, it was even a little difficult. Naruto frowned. Although it was his first time to mobilize chakra, it shouldn't be so difficult. With his spiritual power, mobilizing chakra shouldn't be that difficult. Suddenly Naruto seemed to think of something. Yes, it should be Nine Tails. The original story mentioned that Nine Tails chakra would interfere with Naruto's control over chakra, and suddenly Naruto was a little startled to realize that he was still under Anbu's surveillance. At this moment Naruto suddenly realized that being a genius is a good thing. After all, he is the son of the fourth Hokage and Uzumaki Kushina, but at this time, acting like a demon is not a good thing. It is normal to be a genius, and there is no shortage of geniuses in this world, but it is not normal to be too outstanding. Naruto pretended that he was still working hard to refine chakra. After an hour, Naruto pretended to be very excited. Anbu in the dark looked at Naruto's excitement and couldn't help but sigh that Naruto was really a genius. There are 4 Anbu monitoring Naruto. From Naruto's perception, there are 2 on the tree outside the window, 1 in the corner of the room, and 1 on the roof. One of them showed malice towards Naruto. Naruto didn't know why, maybe it was because of his identity as a fox demon. After refining the chakra, Naruto tried to mobilize the chakra in his body and attach it to his hands. He failed several times, but the sound coming from his body surprised Naruto very much. Chakra control +1, chakra control +2. After the voice appeared, Naruto felt as if he had practiced dozens of times. Although he still felt very clumsy, he was extremely happy. This was a guarantee for his success. Time passed day by day, and the third generation was very satisfied with Naruto's performance when they heard the reports from their subordinates. He had fully inherited the talents of the fourth generation and the physique of Kushina, plus the existence of 9 tails in his body. As long as Naruto fully trusted himself, the future would be promising. Danzo. This is the true way to control people. This reminded third generation of the gifted boy Uchiha Shisui. It was a shame that he was a member of Uchiha, but Uchiha had to be eliminated. This is all for Konoha. Third generation took a puff of the cigarette in his hand and exhaled thick smoke. Half a year has passed slowly. Naruto looked at the fish in the bucket and swallowed. The living expenses given by the third generation were not enough for his daily life. The people in the village hated him very much. Although the owner of Ichiraku Ramen often helped him, he could not get enough nutrition by eating ramen alone. After learning chakra, coupled with his ability of God's reward for hard work, Naruto's physical strength far exceeded that of his peers. However, Naruto did not display his full strength. The strength he usually displayed was only about 1/10 of his full strength. This already made Anbu in the dark marvel at the genius. Fire style, small fireball technique. He skillfully performed an E-level ninjutsu. Although it was a ninjutsu, it was only the size of a fist and was simply used for comedy. In fact, Naruto begged and pleaded with the third generation to get this. The third generation claimed that ninjutsu was too dangerous and only gave Naruto this playful ninjutsu, and required that only after he entered the ninja school would a special teacher come to teach Naruto. However, through the ability of God's reward for hard work, Naruto has become extremely proficient in the small fireball technique. Naruto even improved it into the great fireball technique, which is slightly weaker than the great fireball. Although he has never seen the great fireball, he has seen the great fireball technique from the scenes of his previous life. This fire style, which is said to never kill anyone, actually can only kill masters. The great fireball technique of the Uchiha clan is still very famous on the battlefield. Naruto gradually came to understand this world. It was more cruel than he had imagined. Not all ninjas were the same as those seen in the original work. There were more genin. Using Kagura's mind's eye, he could feel many sources of chakra. The chakra of some genin and chunin is not even as good as Naruto's, and that's because Naruto hasn't refined his chakra much, but Naruto can control the chakra in his body very easily. If Nine Tails doesn't mess things up, Naruto estimates that his control over chakra is not inferior to that of little Sakura when she just graduated. As for Naruto's desire to conduct more in-depth chakra training, such as treading water and climbing trees, it is not realistic because Naruto has no one to teach him. However, Naruto can also do some simple control without being discovered by Anbu. It's like Naruto is now using the fireball technique to grill fish, and sprinkling some homemade seasonings from his previous life's knowledge on it. It tastes simply delicious after one bite. Fish grilling skill +5. Thanks to the frequent hunting during this period, Naruto has grown very fast. Now he is almost 5 years old but looks like a child of 6 or 7 years old. However, Naruto probably has more of the ability due to hard work. In the original work, Naruto was thin and short in the early stage, mainly because he often ate unfulfilled and expired foods. Now that Naruto has the mind of an adult, he naturally will not eat those expired foods. Naruto was eating grilled fish when he suddenly saw the third Hokage approaching. With a happy look on his face, he said, "Is the third generation grandfather here to give me living expenses?" "Third Hokage, I came to see how you were doing, Naruto. Are you grilling fish?" The third generation tried their best to put on a kind face. Looking at the third Hokage's face, Naruto just felt it was very fake. If he wasn't here to give me living expenses, what were he here for? To eat my food. Humph, don't think I don't know. I'm afraid you've already reported my whereabouts here, and you're pretending to have discovered me here by accident. The third generation grabbed the fish that Naruto was grilling without any hesitation and took a bite. It tasted quite good. I didn't expect Naruto had such a skill. Naruto, why don't you go to the village and play with the kids? The third generation looked kind. Third generation grandpa, the children in the village don't like me and call me a fox demon, so I don't like going to the village to play. Third generation grandpa is the best. He always gives me money and delicious food. Third generation, Is this targeting my wallet? Ahem, little Naruto, how about I send you to a ninja school next year? That way you can make a lot of friends. Really, can I make a lot of friends too? Forget it, I have my third generation grandpa and that's enough. I want to be a great Hokage like the third generation grandpa. Naruto's face suddenly turned red, as if he was very excited. Ha ha ha, Naruto, it's very difficult to become Hokage. Where the leaves are flying, the fire will never stop. After the leaves fall to the ground, they will nourish the roots and finally grow new buds. Hearing the third Hokage say this, Naruto snorted inwardly. Why have you, old man, never been to the battlefield? You have been silent since the Nine Tails Rebellion pushed the Nine Tails out of Konoha, and you are afraid of death. You say you are protecting the villagers and ensuring that your offspring grow strong, then why do you send a few-year-old child to the battlefield? Naruto, this is your living expenses. You must spend it sparingly. I will come to see you after I leave. The third generation left with a kind face, and gave living expenses to Naruto before leaving. After all, he was Minato's child. It's actually 2,000 yuan. Naruto was a little happy. With the previous 1,500, he now had 3,500. He could eat a few bowls of Ichiraku ramen. After all, apart from Ichiraku ramen, he had basically no other use for his money. After finishing the remaining fish, Naruto happily picked up the bucket and went home. He went home very late because there were few people around at this time and he didn't want to see the disgusted eyes and deep malice of those ignorant villagers in the village. It was really hard for him to imagine how Naruto in the original work could face the tide of malice without turning evil. The following days were spent in constant training. As he grew older, Naruto began to try to develop some physical skills. Of course, most of them were hidden. He wanted to see if he could develop something like the Marine 6 styles in the pirate's world. With his ability of God rewarding hard work, he would most likely succeed. Although it has not been successful yet, my own strength has become much stronger. But the proficiency in his mind proved that his practice was possible. Naruto guessed that the 6 styles required a very strong physical foundation, which was why he could not succeed. His current physical strength was not enough. Soon it was the end of the year, and Naruto went home for training as usual. It was already winter, and heavy snow covered the entire Konoha. The sky seemed a little dim, and it was already evening. Suddenly several voices came into Naruto's ears. Look, this monster, its eyes are actually white. Let's hit her with stones, this white-eyed monster. Naruto looked in the direction where the sound came from, and saw 3 or 4 little boys surrounding a little girl. This scene made Naruto feel inexplicably familiar. Isn't this the scene in the original novel where Naruto heroically saves the beauty but gets beaten badly? Hey, stop it, all of you. Naruto ran up to a few people and said that they had to take care of this. After all, she was his future wife. It's this demon fox. Do you want to meddle in other people's business? These 2 monsters are really a perfect match. One is a white-eyed monster, and the other is a demon fox. Teach this demon fox a lesson. Several others echoed. I'll show you why the flowers are so red. Naruto grinned and laughed. His strong physique allowed him to easily knock down these kids who were 2 or 3 years older than him. Woo woo woo, don't hit me, I give up. I want to find my mother. The fox demon wants to eat people. A burst of crying was heard, and several people ran away crawling. No longer caring about the runaway child, he would most likely go to his mother to complain about himself. This was not the first time. He was no longer the original Naruto. After possessing the ability of God's reward for hard work, how could these ordinary children bully him? Naruto turned to look at Hinata, the being known as the Byakugan princess in her previous life. What a face it is, as delicate as a porcelain doll, with pupils without any color, coupled with that cute face, it instantly hits Naruto's soft heart. It's not that Naruto likes Hinata, but Hinata's face and heart that seem to be pure. When she was little, she looked like a blank sheet of paper, pure and flawless. Thinking of the girl who loved Naruto deeply in his previous life, Naruto suddenly felt that the original Naruto would actually like little Sakura, the girl who hated him at the beginning. Even though her sense of Naruto improved later, it was just because she wanted to use Naruto's power to get Sasuke back, and she basically just yelled Naruto when she was desperate. Naruto quickly shook his head to drive the thought out of his mind, looked at the girl in front of him, and said, "Hello, my name is Uzumaki Naruto, what is your name?" Although he knew her name, they had never met before. If he directly said that he knew Hinata, it might arouse the suspicion of the third generation. Looking at the boy in front of her who stretched out his hand, Hinata's big watery eyes suddenly lowered and she kept scratching her fingers. This was her habit. She would tickle her fingers whenever she was nervous. My name is Hyuga. Hinata. Hinata's face instantly turned red as she hesitantly said her name. Puff. Looking at the shy girl in front of him, Naruto chuckled. She was indeed a shy girl. He grabbed Hinata's hand and said, "Where is your home? I'll take you back." Hinata gently raised her hand and pointed in a direction, and when Naruto walked forward, he felt a resistance on his hand. Hinata stood there blankly, her face getting redder and redder, as if she was about to faint. Naruto was shocked at this time and said, "Sorry, I didn't mean it." Naruto then remembered that Hinata seemed to be like this when she was shy. In the original anime, steam would even come out of Hinata's head, and she was given the title of Steam Princess. However, this is a real world, and Hinata's head would not come out of steam, but her expression was the same as in the original. "No. It's okay." Seeing Hinata being so careful, Naruto curled up his lips into a smile and said, "Let's go." This time Naruto did not hold Hinata's hand again, otherwise Naruto was afraid that Hinata might faint. The two walked on the dim snow, neither of them spoke to each other. Hinata still kept looking at Naruto out of the corner of her eye. The entire Konoha is larger than a county town in the previous life, and far more comprehensive than what is seen in the original work. After Hinata's directions several times, Naruto and Hinata finally arrived at where Hinata was. The place is very large, and is distinguished from the houses of the surrounding residents. It looks very imposing. This is where the Hyuga tribe lives. Naruto took off the scarf from his neck and put it on Hinata. Hinata did not refuse, but her face began to turn red again. While Naruto was helping Hinata put on her scarf, Hinata kept drawing circles on the ground with one foot and kept scratching her fingers, not daring to look at Naruto. "Okay, it's getting late, let's go in early." After giving the instructions, Naruto watched Hinata walk towards the gate of the Hyuga clan and knocked gently on the door. Soon a figure came out and was startled when he saw Hinata outside the door. "Ms. Hinata, why are you here?" When he saw Naruto, a hint of disgust flashed in his eyes. "Miss Hinata, that's a little fox demon, don't have any contact with him." Seeing Hinata walk into the door, Naruto turned and left, but the maid's words reached Naruto's ears and made him pause. But soon he heard a voice that made him very happy. "Naruto-kun is not a monster." The maid was startled. She saw Hinata raise her head with a stubborn look in her eyes. She was actually defending the little fox demon. Although Hinata was very cowardly and didn't look like an heir to the main family, the maid was still terribly scared. If Hinata's words were heard by the steward, she didn't know what kind of punishment she would receive. "I'm sorry, Miss Hinata." The maid quickly bent down and apologized. Naruto quickened his pace and left here, but his steps were exceptionally brisk. Naruto was in a good mood now. Not only did he meet his future wife, but in his perception, Hinata did not have deep malice towards him like others. And what's gratifying is that Naruto's strength has made great progress. According to Naruto's guess, he should be at the level of Genin, and with the help of the ability of God rewards hard work, he successfully developed the small fireball technique into a chain great fireball technique. It should be as good as Uchiha's great fireball technique. His current strength should be stronger than Kakashi of the same period, but he doesn't have any cheats. If he hadn't become decadent in the later period, he would have been a complete pervert. There is still a long way to go. What happened to Naruto today was passed on to the third Hokage's desk the next day. "Go down." Yes. Anbu, wearing a painted mask, knelt on one knee, and the next moment he turned into a black shadow and disappeared on the spot. The third generation looked at the report presented by Anbu. Naruto still exercised and studied the useless fireball technique every day. It was of no use except to make it the size of a human head. However, it also showed Naruto's talent in ninjutsu. Thinking of another thing mentioned in it. Hyuga, maybe it would be a good idea to find a bond for Naruto. The third Hokage's mumbling voice echoed in the air. Although Naruto was very sunny when facing him, he thought so, he was still a little cold when facing others. That's right. Anyone who is called a demon fox would probably be like this. After thinking about Naruto's dependence on himself, the third generation couldn't help but feel satisfied. Danzo, this is why I'm the Hokage. A year has passed in a flash. This day was the day for registration for the ninja school, and the third generation personally sent Naruto to school. Naruto, when you go to the ninja school, you must study hard and strive to become a glorious ninja. Yes, I will, third generation grandpa. Looking at the kind face of the third generation, Naruto nodded. The third generation was old, no longer the great ninja they once were. Power had corrupted their minds. The Hyuga Hiyashi incident that caused a lot of controversy a year ago shows how weak Konoha is now. Konoha has really declined under the leadership of F4. White Fang is dead, the Sannin are leaving, and Uchiha is about to be forced to rebel. It's simply a terrible hand. After Naruto said goodbye to the third generation, he entered the ninja school. Seeing many children being sent to school by their parents, the warm scene made Naruto feel heartbroken. They seemed to have forgotten how their peaceful life came about. It was his father who paid for it with his life. When the villagers saw Naruto, they showed disgust without disguising their expressions and whispered to the children around them, "You have to be careful with that child, he's a demon fox." Looking at the Konoha villagers whispering to each other, Naruto ignored them, his eyes full of indifference, and walked to a corner alone. "Shikaku, is that the child?" At this time, a fat figure next to him said. "He is Cho among Ino Shikacho, and the father of Akamichi Choji, one of the 12 young warriors of Konoha." The person he just asked was Nara Shikaku, the father of Nara Shikamaru, who is also one of the 12 young warriors. Well, the third Hokage is going too far. A soft sigh was heard. With Shikaku's intelligence, how could he not guess Naruto's identity? With that golden hair, dark blue pupils, and the new generation of Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, plus Naruto's age, if he still couldn't guess Naruto's identity, then his life as the so-called think tank of Konoha would have been in vain. Although the third generation blocked the information, they knew that fourth Hokage Namikaze Minato's wife Uzumaki Kushina was pregnant. Even if the third generation released the news that Uzumaki Kushina and her unborn child died in the Nine-Tails Rebellion, how did Naruto explain it? But he couldn't interfere with all this, he could only let nature take its course. Soon, after the entrance ceremony following the third Hokage's speech, the process of class division began. The third Hokage is indeed very good at capturing people's hearts. He personally serves as the principal of the ninja school and promotes Sarutobi Hiruzen's Will of Fire every year. What makes Naruto most ashamed is that the third generation also tampered with the textbooks, claiming to be the strongest Hokage. Although these textbooks were not written by him, they were definitely instructed by him. Even nowadays, when children are playing ninja games, they all say that the third generation is the strongest Hokage. The brainwashing really starts from children. However, his soul is the thinking of an adult, otherwise he would really be fooled by the third generation like the original Naruto, and devote himself to sacrificing his life for Konoha. In the words of the great Toad Sage, Naruto is the son of prophecy who will save the ninja world, but Naruto knows that if he wants to truly change the ninja world, he must reform it from top to bottom and change the class structure of this world. There is a saying in the past life, when a country prospers, the people suffer, when a country perishes, the people suffer. In the war in the ninja world, the ones who suffer the most are the lowest level civilians and some civilian ninjas, who are thrown onto the battlefield as cannon fodder. While those high and mighty rulers are still living a life of extravagance and decadence, who would have thought that the rulers of this world are actually those ordinary people? The first Hokage Senju Hashirama started the one country, one village system, believing that this was the true way to achieve peace, but this was just his wishful thinking. This is just a matter of elevating the war from small village, tribal and family wars to a larger level. Generally speaking, most wars in the ninja world are for resources. Take Sunagaku for example. Why do they always want to conquer the fire country? It's because the fire country is rich in resources, while the wind country is located in the desert and has scarce resources. The water resources that are everywhere in the fire country are scarce in the wind country. The same goes for several other ninja villages, but unfortunately, there are so many geniuses in Konoha village in the land of fire. After the death of Senju Hashirama, geniuses continued to emerge to protect Konoha. Naruto is more inclined to Uchiha Madara's way, to directly sweep across and unify the ninja world, but Uchiha Madara did not form a community of interests with others, which led to others being unwilling to follow Uchiha Madara and break this seemingly peaceful tranquility. However, now is not the time to think about these issues. The most important thing for him now is to master the strength to survive so that he will be qualified to change this sick world. Suddenly a voice broke Naruto's thoughts. The class division begins now. Those who hear your name please go to the class and wait for your teacher. Ono Jiro. Class C. Shiranui Shweni. Class B. Quote. Quote. Uchiha Takashi. Class B. Inazuka Kiba. Class A. Haruno Sakura. Class A. Names were read one by one, and Naruto heard many familiar names. It's not that Class A is the best class, but it is definitely the most special class. Almost all the students from the big families in Konoha are still in Class A. Of course there are a few children from commoner families who got in by luck and took advantage of the situation. For example, Haruno Sakura and a few extras. Uchiha Sasuke. Team A. Uzumaki Naruto. Team A. Naruto also heard his name, and sure enough, he was also in Class A. When he heard Uchiha Sasuke, Naruto looked at Uchiha Sasuke, who was wearing the Uchiha clan emblem and had a proud look on his face. He looks like a little boy. Before the Uchiha clan was wiped out, Nijiro was still quite cute. Now he looks like a child pretending to be calm. It has to be said that the Uchiha family has really good genes. Uchiha Sasuke has shown a good appearance since he was a child. No wonder he was so popular with girls later. When Sasuke heard the name Uzumaki Naruto, he also looked at Naruto, who seemed strange to him. Why did those people call him a demon fox when he was no different from us? Well, I am different. I am from the Uchiha clan. Influenced by his fellow tribesmen, the young Sasuke is also proud of Uchiha. However, they have not yet acquired the arrogance and domineering spirit of Uchiha. There are indeed some people in Uchiha who are arrogant and domineering, but that is not all. Everyone found their class and waited quietly for their teacher, but there were always a few who couldn't sit still and looked around at everything around them. Naruto looked at his classmates who he would live and train with for 6 years in the future. The one with paint on his face should be Inazuka Kiba, but he is still young, and his only companion is not around yet. If Naruto remembers correctly, it should be Akamaru. There was also a fat man eating potato chips. He seemed indifferent to everything, as if the potato chips in his hand were the whole world. Next to him, there was a guy with a pineapple head, who looked listless and was lying on the table, thinking about something. Next to them, there was a pretty blonde little loli, probably Ino, who was looking at Uchiha Sasuke with the other little girls. One can't help but sigh that the children in the Hokage world are really precocious. Girls nowadays basically know everything they should know, unlike him in his previous life, who didn't know anything about love at this age. Naruto also saw Hinata and walked over and sat directly next to Hinata, greeting her happily. Naruto-kun, long time, no see. Naruto responded in a broken voice, and couldn't help but smile as he saw Hinata's face gradually turn red. While everyone was chattering, a few long-legged little lolis gathered in front of Uchiha Sasuke, and no one even knew when they came in. Iruka pushed open the door and came in. It turned out that he was still in the principal's office listening to the third Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen's lecture. Iruka, I plan to put Uzumaki Naruto in your class. I think you are the most suitable person to teach him. The third Hokage's voice came slowly, and Iruka was a little stunned, because the third generation told him that Uzumaki Naruto was now the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, which made him a little upset. His parents died at the hands of Nine-Tails, which made him feel a little overwhelmed and even a little hateful towards this boy who was called a fox demon by the villagers. Iruka sighed deeply and said, "Third Hokage-sama, I understand. Here is their information, take a look." The third generation pushed a document towards Iruka, and when Iruka opened it, he couldn't help but gasp, because the names on the list basically included all the disciples of the big families in Konoha. The Uchiha clan of Konoha, the heirs of the main family of the Hyuga clan, and even the descendants of Ino Shikacho, as well as members of some families in Konoha, with only a few civilians mixed in. Third Hokage-sama, can I really? Iruka, don't underestimate yourself. I've seen your achievements. You are definitely capable of doing this. I'll leave those kids to you. The third generation said softly before turning and walking out of the office, leaving Iruka lost in thought. After a while, Iruka, with a slightly nervous mood, took the file bags of several people and went to the classroom where Class A was located. He walked through 2 corridors and came to a door with a sign of Class A printed on it. He slowly pushed the door open. The scene he saw made Iruka secretly angry. Bang! He threw the file bag in his hand onto the table. The sudden sound scared everyone. When they saw who was coming, they knew it was the teacher and quickly sat up straight. After seeing everyone seated, Iruka breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Next, let's get to know each other. Those whose names are called, please introduce your dreams and hobbies." Iruka flipped open the roster that the third generation had prepared earlier and called out the name on it, Sano Dairo. At this time, a chubby guy who looked a bit sturdy stood up and said loudly, "Hello everyone. My name is Sano Dairo, and my dream is to become a Hokage. My hobbies are fitness and food." Everyone burst into laughter when they heard this. No wonder he looked fat and a little strong, but he was just a strong fat man. Okay, everyone, stop laughing. Taro-san's hobbies and dreams are pretty good. Next student, Haruno Sakura. The second classmate was someone Naruto was familiar with. A girl wearing a cheongsam, with pink hair and a slightly broad forehead stood up and said, "Hello everyone, my name is Haruno Sakura, my best friend is Ino, and my dream is to become a great female ninja like Master Tsunade." The current little Sakura was still a freshman in school. She hadn't fallen out with Ino yet, and she hadn't completely fallen in love with Sasuke yet, but she was one of the girls who had just gathered around Sasuke. The following students all introduced themselves as Hokage or something like that. Uzumaki Naruto. Is it my turn? Naruto slowly stood up from Hinata's side and said, "My name is Uzumaki Naruto. I like Ichiraku ramen, and my dream is world nuclear peace and studying the mysteries of the world." This can be considered as Naruto's dream. Anyway, in the end he decided to embark on the path of being an enemy of the world and finally destroy the world with nuclear weapons. Since he has the ability of God rewards hard work, Naruto has become interested in studying the mysteries of the world. No matter what he does, it is an easy thing for Naruto. Because if you do it, you will gain something, but Naruto discovered that the deeper your knowledge and understanding, the stronger your ability to be rewarded by God. This made Naruto try every possible way to acquire knowledge. Naruto, it's a great idea. World peace, right, it's a great idea. In the ninja world, peace is simply unimaginable, but Iruka did not refute any child's dream, even if the child in front of him was the object of his hatred. However, when Iruka heard Naruto's dream, his heart was touched, and his hatred towards Naruto inexplicably weakened a little. The child in front of him was just a carrier of 9 tails, and also a miserable child. Perhaps he shouldn't be prejudiced against him, but Iruka couldn't untie the knot with him right now. When Naruto introduced himself, Uchiha Sasuke also looked at this guy who seemed a little strange to him, and was even more arrogant than him. He was still a little shocked by Naruto's dream though. Uchiha Sasuke. When he heard his name being called, Sasuke stood up quickly and said loudly, "My name is Uchiha Sasuke. My favorite person is my brother. I hate people who disturb me and my brother. I like tricolored balls, and my dream is to let the glory of Uchiha resound throughout the village." The children who heard Sasuke's introduction all exclaimed in admiration, mostly the girls. Naruto looked at the boy introduced in front of him. He was no longer the bitter and vengeful boy in the original work who always talked about revenge. Now he was just a little boy who was a little tsundere. However, Sasuke was still influenced by Uchiha, and he kept talking about the glory of Uchiha. He is still too naive. Next, all the students in the class introduced themselves one by one. When it came to Hinata, Naruto found that she was a little nervous. Naruto pulled Hinata's hand and then let go, but Hinata's face still blushed. Looking at Naruto's encouraging eyes, Hinata slowly spoke, "Hello everyone. My name is Hyuga Hinata, and my dream is to become a gentle and virtuous woman like my mother." Hinata quickly sat down after she finished speaking, with her head lowered. Naruto saw that Hinata's fair neck suddenly turned pink. Naruto thought Hinata was nervous, but in fact Hinata was. "Naruto-kun shook my hand. Shake my hand." Iruka sighed inwardly when he saw Hinata's look. As the heir of the Hyuga family, it was not okay for him to be so weak. Following Iruka's calls, all the students in the class soon introduced themselves, and then wrote down each student's hobbies and dreams. These were to be shown to the third generation, because a person's dreams and hobbies could show what kind of person he was. Of course, it may not be comprehensive, but it is also quite important information. After finishing the introduction, Iruka closed the booklet he had just written. "Hello everyone, today is our first day of school. We won't do anything too much. Tomorrow we will start formal teaching. You can go home after the bell rings." As soon as Aruka finished speaking, everyone quieted down and waited quietly for the end of school. Nowadays, many children are still restless. Haruno Sakura came to Ino and whispered something, while his eyes glanced at Sasuke secretly. As for Nara Shikamaru, he looked bored and started to sleep on the table. Choji was still eating the chips in his hand carefully, as if the chips in his hand were the most important thing. Uchiha Sasuke pretended to look cold, but he was actually still paying attention to when the get out of class would end. He wanted to go home and share what happened today with his brother. Ding ding ding. After a while, the bell rang amid everyone's slightly agonizing wait, and Naruto greeted Hinata and left. Uchiha Sasuke watched the strange guy in front of him walk through the crowd without any hesitation. This direction, it seems to be the back mountain. Why is he going there? Sasuke looked at this strange man. He didn't know why he paid attention to this person who didn't seem to be anything special. If there was anything special, it was that his eyes were very deep. At this time, Naruto didn't know that he had been treated as a weird person. However, even if he knew, Naruto would not have any thoughts. The most important thing for him now was to practice and strive to become stronger as soon as possible. Naruto discovered that when he was in school, the Anbu who was monitoring him disappeared. He probably wasn't worried about any danger happening in the ninja school. Also, his class was where all the heirs of the major families were. If anyone dared to mess around with this, he would die without knowing how. After leaving the school gate, the feeling of being monitored came to his mind again. After Naruto used Kagura's mind's eye to check, he found that the number of Anbu monitoring him had been reduced from 4 to 2. The Anbu that hated him before has disappeared. Maybe he is afraid that the Anbu will hurt him. Naruto came to the place where he usually practiced as usual. It was an open space and few people came here. It was considered a good place for practice. What comes into view is a stream. The water is so clear that you can see the pebbles at the bottom and even some fish poking their heads out. There are several tall trees around, dozens of meters high, with lush leaves. Next to the stream is a very high rock wall, which looks very dangerous. A distance of dozens of meters is nothing for a ninja. Naruto usually uses this piece of rock to practice rock climbing and climb up the high slope above. There are several wooden stakes near the big tree. These were made by Naruto before and used for training. In the eyes of professionals, it may be just a very simple training site, but for Naruto, these are the only conditions. With God's power to reward hard work, progress is far beyond the imagination of most people. Just like when Naruto was training, he was not afraid of Anbu observing him in the dark. Although Naruto only showed the training progress of a normal genius, his overall strength improvement was not as good as it appeared. Naruto walked to the wooden stake and began his training as usual, kicking the stake continuously. A voice began to come intermittently in my mind. Physical strength plus 2, strength plus 1. Physical strength plus 3, strength plus 2. Naruto could feel his body getting stronger. As he sweated and his muscles became more tired, he gained more as hard work paid off. After finishing kicking the wooden stake, Naruto began to challenge the cliff in front of him. Not being able to use chakra to attach, and having to rely entirely on physical fitness to complete the challenge, is undoubtedly a very challenging task for a 6-year-old child. But it is no longer a difficult task for Naruto now, because day by day, Naruto has mastered master-level rock climbing skills. As Naruto began to climb, the voice continued to sound in Naruto's mind, climbing skills plus 1. Strength plus 2. Constitution plus 1. Spirit plus 0.1. That's right, rock climbing training will not only increase Naruto's power and physical strength, it will even strengthen Naruto's mental strength. This may be because training is a matter of tempering the spirit. However, for Naruto, the current training is not as difficult as before. Therefore, the mental training is reduced, but it will still increase a little bit of mental strength. Naruto does not mind it. After all, little by little it adds up to a lot. Naruto can now reach the level of an elite genin with physical skills alone. It may seem that he is not as good as the 6-year-old Kakashi in the original work, but Naruto is higher than Kakashi in overall level. This is mainly because Naruto has no one to teach him, and he cannot even fully let go of his training. Who taught Kakashi when he was a child? Konoha's White Fang. Even the Sannin were not as famous as the White Fang at that time. They were considered strong among the Kage level. But Naruto also knows his weakness, which is ninjutsu. If there is ninjutsu now, with Naruto's chakra, Naruto can become a Chunin level, and his fighting power can even reach the level of elite Chunin. The reason why combat effectiveness is reached is mainly because the knowledge required by ninjas is not just combat effectiveness, but also combat experience, intelligence gathering, trap techniques, assassination techniques and so on. However, Naruto is confident that he can become a strong man with the ability of God's reward for hard work. Naruto does not refine chakra too much now, he knows the importance of the foundation. Besides, there are still 6 years before the plot begins, so there is no need to rush. If one's true strength is exposed, the gain will be counterproductive. Even the third generation and Danzo didn't care about Naruto's training in taijutsu. In their eyes, taijutsu was just a minor subject. There are limits to what can be achieved. If it weren't for the fact that during the Third World War, Might Guy's father, Might Dai, had used 8 inner gates to defeat the 7 ninja swordsmen, people might have paid even less attention to taijutsu. Even if Might Guy could shine for a moment, it was only a momentary brilliance gained by using his life. He was just one of the 7 ninja swordsmen, and was nothing compared to the cage-level strongman. As for the current Might Guy, he was just an ordinary jonin. Except for Kakashi, no one knew his potential. Naruto climbed up and down the cliffs again and again, and then he lay on the ground, sweat streaming down his cheeks. In fact, Naruto still had 1/3 of his physical strength left. My current strength should be able to support my development of the 6 styles. I didn't consider the issue of chakra before. Perhaps I can use the combination of chakra and the 6 styles to practice. It may be easier. Maybe I can even develop my own ninja taijutsu. Currently, my strength is taijutsu, and I only have taijutsu. As for ninjutsu, I only have one, and that is the continuous great fireball technique. It's quite powerful in the medium genin, but not powerful enough in the special jonin and above. My mental power is very strong because of my 2 lives as a human. I must master illusions in the future. Although I am not afraid of illusions in the original work because of 9 tails, it is just an ordinary illusion. Now that I have the ability of God's reward for hard work, my mental power in the future will be very terrifying. I may not be afraid of Mangekyo's illusions. Illusion is also a direction for development. Besides, I didn't know any other ninjutsu except for a ball rolling and multiple shadow clone technique. It was a complete waste of my own chakra. The other thing is medical ninjutsu. Not only can you heal yourself, but you can also heal your teammates. It's like a nurse. If you can reach Tsunade's level, it's equivalent to half immortality. I have just as much chakra as Tsunade. Maybe it would be nice to get in touch with Tsunade in the future. Naruto slowly thought about his future development in his mind. Oh, there is also a sealing technique. The sealing technique is very magical in Naruto's eyes. Its role has been shown many times in the original book. The barrier is related to the seal. There is also a sealing seal that can create a scroll to store items, which is simply a storage ring in the world of immortal cultivation. If it were someone else, they would probably choose one path, but as for me, I can become omnipotent. Naruto thought with pride that whatever he was given by God's will to do was no longer twice as effective with half the effort, but rather he would get 10 times the result with 1 effort, or even more, because God's will to hard work could also force Naruto to increase his proficiency in areas that he was completely unfamiliar with. Even if Naruto had ever thought about the principles of the sealing technique, something popped up in his mind. Sealing technique understanding plus 0.0001. Naruto knew nothing about sealing techniques. Although diligence can help him understand the existence of sealing techniques, the increase in proficiency is pitifully small. Naruto estimated that this was because he knew nothing about sealing techniques. It was a complete blank slate, so Naruto did not intend to study the sealing technique too much before gaining some knowledge about it. Naruto's future direction is to focus on physical skills and ninjutsu, supplemented by illusion skills and medical ninjutsu. After resting, Naruto did not put pressure on his body, but took out the fishing rod that he had hidden long ago, ran to 100 meters upstream from here and started fishing. According to Naruto's observation, fish are most abundant here. With Naruto's almost full-level fishing skills, Naruto soon reaped a great harvest. Looking at the fish caught in the bucket, Naruto smiled and carried the bucket to a cliff a few dozen meters away from the river. There was a small cave inside. This was the hole Naruto had dug before. It was not big, but it could still prevent rainwater from seeping in on rainy days. Placing the bucket near the hole in the wall, Naruto walked out of the cave and came to the woods at a speed beyond that of an ordinary person. Here was the trap he left yesterday, a simple hunting trap designed for survival. It did not require any technical difficulty, and the third generation did not doubt it. When Naruto arrived here, there was already a trapped rabbit. Naruto picked up the rabbit ears, shook the weight, smiled and said, "Not bad luck." If no prey was caught, Naruto would have to eat the fish he had caught before. Carrying the rabbit back to the outside of the cave, Naruto skillfully took out a kunai from the ninja tool bag in his pants. This was a gift given to Naruto by the third generation on the eve of Naruto's entrance to Jonin school. He skillfully scraped the scales of the fish and cleaned the rabbit. With the help of the ability of God rewards hard work and the cooking skills that Naruto had honed over the years, he was able to handle all of this easily. He skillfully used the kunai to cut a few branches and quickly roasted the rabbit. He then cooked the fish in a pot, which Naruto had asked the third generation for before. The third generation also knew that Naruto often practiced here and cooked for himself, so they purchased an extra set of tableware for Naruto. And because of Naruto's cooking skills, the third generation would also come to have Naruto's dinner. In fact, the third generation's goal was to deepen Naruto's feelings for him, and eating was just a side job. However, because of Naruto's superb cooking skills, the third generation was happy to come here. In his heart, Naruto has become very dependent on him, but in reality, Naruto is not at all interested in the emotional card he plays. Isn't it the third generation that made Naruto what he is now? If Naruto hadn't stood up and become independent, he would probably still be drinking expired milk and eating poor quality food bought from others. He has the ability to return his parents' house and the assets his parents have saved. As the fourth Hokage, why would he live in a small house? And as his parents, how could they not leave some assets for him? Originally, he wanted to become a hero of the village, but now, if his mother had his temper and knew his life, he would probably want to tear down Konoha. The food was quickly devoured. Well, my craftsmanship has improved again. Licking his lips, Naruto patted his belly, stood up in satisfaction, and began to run towards home. The sun was no longer visible, and the moon was faintly visible. Tomorrow was running quickly on the street, with only a few people. Naruto ran quickly, feeling several disgusted looks. I didn't pay much attention to it. I have already gotten used to these looks over the years. Naruto quickly returned to his own cabin. Although it was small, Naruto had tidied it very cleanly and it was no longer as messy as in the original book. After coming back, Naruto washed off the stinky sweat caused by today's training and fell asleep quickly. Sunrise in the morning, Naruto tidied his clothes. There were many kinds of clothes in Naruto's wardrobe. They were no longer the same few sets of clothes in the original work. He asked the third generation to buy them for him because no one would sell clothes to him. Of course, the third generation has to be thick-skinned since they have taken advantage of their parents' assets by paying their own pockets and only have a small pension. Naruto looked in the mirror and thought, well, he is still very handsome. Because of sufficient food and training, Naruto now looks very strong and his mental state is much better. They set out on the road to the ninja school. When Naruto arrived, he was only part way there, but Hinata was already there. Naruto-kun. Hearing Hinata greet him, Naruto smiled and said, "Hello, Hinata." Hinata's heart was beating fast. Naruto-kun smiled at me. Naruto-kun smiled at me. Seeing Hinata's face turn red again, Naruto's lips curled up into a smile again. Isn't Hinata attractive? I don't know how Naruto in the original novel could fall in love with little Sakura. After a while, people arrived one after another, and as the bell rang, Iruka entered the classroom on time. Hello everyone, this is our first class, so I won't waste any time. Does anyone know what it takes to become a ninja? Iruka kept looking at the students in the class, watching them whispering to each other. Uchiha Sasuke, you tell me something. Sasuke stood up, like a peacock, raised his head and glanced at everyone proudly, then said, "It's chakra." Chakra is a kind of energy extracted from 130 trillion human cells in a specific ratio of spiritual and physical energy. After saying that, Uchiha Sasuke sat down proudly, causing a burst of exclamations from the nymphomaniacs. Very good. Sasuke is right. If you want to become a ninja, the most important thing is chakra. Chakra is the foundation of becoming a ninja. Next, I will teach you how to refine chakra. Uruka's voice was very steady and he spoke in detail. In this world, even physical ninjas have chakra in their bodies, just like Might Guy and Rock Lee. They also have chakra in their bodies, but their talent in ninjutsu is too poor. Everyone listened to Uruka's explanation, and the civilian children were fascinated and listened very seriously. After all, this was the foundation of their existence in this world. People in the Hokage world matured precociously, and children of a few years old already had basically the same cognition as teenagers in their previous lives. Naruto looked at the people around him. Shikamaru was still nonchalant, Sasuke hadn't done any chakra refining, and the children of several large families seemed to have practiced chakra in their families. Their foundation has long been far behind those of ordinary children. The morning time is basically spent on refining chakra. After all, chakra is the foundation. In the afternoon, we study the theory. Wow, I opened the book and it was the Will of Fire. The opening scene is where the leaves are flying and the fire is endless. The flames will illuminate the village and new buds will grow. After that, the history of Konoha and the deeds of the first Hokage were introduced. However, they were somewhat different from what he knew. The third Hokage was so shameless that he portrayed himself as the strongest Hokage in history. Some of the theories contained in it have a strong flavor of pyramid schemes. After being influenced by modern times, Naruto feels that this teaching material is not mature at all. After a few days of studying theory, Naruto went to his own small base for training after school as usual. But today Iruka suddenly announced that there will be a practical class today. The practical classes are divided into kunai throwing and combat training. This made everyone present very excited. After all, they had been studying boring theoretical knowledge for several days. Naruto didn't find it difficult. Although his memory had not yet reached the level of photographic memory, it was not much worse. Even Naruto himself didn't know the extent of his current mental strength. Following Iruka, we came to the training ground. Although it was a small training ground, it was completely sufficient for the students of the ninja school. Next, let's do kunai throwing training, Iruka said loudly. And let everyone line up in a row. There are a total of 10 targets in this training ground. 10 people are divided into groups and practice kunai throwing. There are only about 20 people in their entire class, which means 2.5 groups can do one round. Uchiha Sasuke was in the first group, standing side by side. After Iruka gave the order, everyone threw the kunai in their hands at the target. Brush, brush, brush. A few slight sounds of breaking through the air were heard, and soon the kunai was thrown onto the target. It can be clearly observed that Uchiha Sasuke slightly pressed down his wrist when throwing the kunai. It was obvious that he had been specially trained in kunai training. Uchiha throwing technique. I didn't expect Sasuke to start training now. As for the others, none of them missed the target, and the worst was just one ring. Some of them seemed to be training in kunai throwing for the first time, so it seems they do have some talent, worthy of being Class A. The most dazzling one was Uchiha Sasuke, who actually hit the bull's eye. Uchiha Sasuke, 10 rings. Sakura Ui, 3 rings. Inuzuka Kiba, 7 rings. Fuji Otsutsuki, 2 rings. Iruka continued to announce everyone's results, while Uchiha Sasuke raised his proud head again and glanced at everyone. Naruto found it funny, but they were still kids after all, and had a competitive mentality. Inuzuka Kiba, in particular, could not help but sneer when he saw Sasuke being warmly welcomed by the girls. Humph. What's so great about that? I just made a mistake just now. Although Inuzuka Kiba has been exposed to kunai throwing training several times in the family, he is not interested in it at all. He is more interested in the family's ninja dog. In a few years, he will also get his own ninja dog. Naruto was in the second group. Hinata was there too. He smiled and encouraged Hinata. He knew the girl needed encouragement. Soon, another round of kunai was thrown, and Naruto deliberately threw 8 rings. With the ability of God rewarding hard work, Naruto quickly mastered the throwing technique and reached the level of Grandmaster. Now he can throw as many rings as he wants. After all, it is just a dead object that cannot move. When he obtained the kunai, he also used a large tree to practice his accuracy. Uzumaki Naruto, 8 rings. Nara Shikamaru, 9 rings. Haruno Sakura, 5 rings. Surprisingly, Haruno Sakura, who had never thrown a kunai before, threw 5 rings. No wonder he was able to become Tsunade's apprentice later. It seems that he has good talent. Although he dislikes Haruno Sakura a little bit, Naruto has never found any malice towards him in Haruno Sakura. This may be the reason why Naruto likes Haruno Sakura in the original work. In fact, Haruno Sakura is not ugly. She has pink hair and big eyes. She looks quite cute. Except for her slightly wide forehead, she is basically a kawaii loli. Almost everyone in this class had no ill will towards Naruto, which made Naruto wonder if they were specially screened. Hyuga Hinata. 9 rings. Soon everyone finished throwing, and 2 people in the last group actually missed the target. This was normal, but the fact that they were able to throw accurately the first time still showed that some people had talent in this area. In the following time, Iruka let everyone practice on their own, and the first time was just to see everyone's talent. Of course, it was just a test of his talent for kunai. He also knew that some of the family members must have been exposed to kunai training when they were in the clan. Naruto was a bit bored. It would be better to let him train himself than to let him train this. Practicing these things was simply a waste of his time. After training for more than 2 hours, most people's arms were sore. As for a few people, they were just being lazy. Like Shikamaru, these trainings were too easy for him. As for Choji, he took out a bag of snacks and started eating. At this time, Iruka suddenly asked everyone to take a break and then conduct practical training. This caused several people to scream loudly, especially Inuzuka Kiba, who already disliked Uchiha Sasuke very much. Always stealing his thunder. Half an hour passed quickly. Fuji Otsutsuki vs Onojiro. The seal of opposition. Soon the 2 students walked to the middle, and after making the opposing seal, they began to look at each other warily, and then rushed towards each other at the same time. There was no beauty in their fight at all, but both of them used chakra, attached to their hands and feet to carry out simple attacks. Although the 2 looked small, with the help of chakra, the damage caused by their punches and kicks was enough to create a dent in the ground. With the help of chakra, their powers are even more terrifying than those of ordinary adults. It has to be said that ordinary people, even children, are quite respectful towards ninjas, because in their eyes the power of ninjas is like that of gods. After the 2 fought for a few minutes, their chakras were almost exhausted. The amount of chakras of both of them was still too little. After that, the 2 relied on physical strength to fight. In the end, Fuji Otsutsuki slightly defeated Onojiro with his physique. Seal of Reconciliation. After the 2 of them made the Seal of Reconciliation, it meant that all their previous grudges were wiped out, and soon all the groups fought. During this time, Inuzuka Kiba protested because he was fighting against others, and he wanted to challenge Uchiha Sasuke. But Iruka refused. Uzumaki Naruto vs. Uchiha Sasuke. Seal of Opposition. After the 2 of them formed the Seal of Opposition, Naruto had a headache. He knew that he couldn't win, otherwise it would definitely attract attention, and the news of his victory over the son of the Uchiha clan leader would spread everywhere the next day. While Naruto was thinking about how much strength to use, Uchiha Sasuke seized the opportunity and attacked. It must be said that Uchiha Sasuke's attack was much faster than the previous attacks of Fuji Otsutsuki and Onojiro. Naruto quickly counterattacks and punches Sasuke. So fast, Sasuke sighed secretly, and their fists collided tightly together. Suddenly, a huge force was transmitted from his arms. Sasuke endured the numbness in his arms and continued to attack. Naruto felt the force of his attack on Sasuke, and watched as Sasuke was able to withstand it. As expected of the second pillar, he can actually withstand 1/20th of my strength. I must stay alive. I must not expose my strength. The 2 of them continued to move around and attack, and Naruto suddenly found that Sasuke's arm was shaking a little. Oops. Naruto, you idiot, why are you pretending to be exhausted? Naruto suddenly pretended to be exhausted, and after fighting with Sasuke for a few minutes, he was kicked by Sasuke and flew out. With Naruto's current superb acting skills, others wouldn't be able to tell there was a problem at all. As for Sasuke, he was a little confused. Was he really exhausted? How could he have such great strength? He was exhausted after all. Tsunere Sasuke started to tremble again. Yeah, Sasuke won. Sasuke is awesome. Sasuke's girl group began cheering, causing the boys to gnash their teeth, wondering why they weren't as popular. Seal of Reconciliation. The 2 of them made the Seal of Reconciliation with each other. Although Sasuke's hands were still shaking slightly, he couldn't stop the excitement on his face. Anyone with a discerning eye can see that the two are very strong. If things go as expected, the top student of this session will be born in their hands. The afternoon passed quickly, and when it was time to go home from school, Uchiha Sasuke couldn't wait to pack his bag and ran home without even looking at Naruto before leaving. As for Naruto, he did not go to his training ground as usual, but instead prepared to go to the school library to read some professional books. Because he had learned from Iruka that the school library would open today. Uchiha Sasuke ran all the way home at a fast pace. When he reached a telephone pole, a voice suddenly rang out, "Sasuke." Uchiha Sasuke looked up and an expression of joy instantly appeared on his little face. "Brother, why are you here?" Seeing Sasuke's happy look, Itachi jumped down from the telephone pole. He originally wanted to wait for Sasuke at home, but the longing in his heart made him want to wait for him on the road that Sasuke must pass. Standing on the telephone pole was just to be able to see Sasuke enter his field of vision faster and more clearly. "I've completed my mission. I'll be waiting for you here. I've only just arrived a moment ago." Itachi rarely smiled, and at this moment, in front of his younger brother, Itachi smiled especially happily. "I will always protect you, Sasuke. Brother, I won first place in the practical class today. How is it? Isn't it awesome?" Sasuke said excitedly. "I met a powerful guy today. If it weren't for his lack of physical strength, I would have been the loser. Our Sasuke is amazing." Itachi pinched Sasuke's nose. Itachi touched Sasuke's head, and then said, "Come on up. I'll carry you." Slowly squatting down, Itachi carried Sasuke on his back. Itachi accidentally touched Sasuke's arm, and Sasuke suddenly gasped. Itachi quickly noticed something was wrong with Sasuke, and quickly put Sasuke down and lifted up Sasuke's sleeves, clearly seeing some bruises and redness on Sasuke's arms. This is due to the huge external force. The only thing that could turn Sasuke into this was the practical lessons that Sasuke mentioned. To have such strength, he shouldn't be exhausted. It seems that your classmate is not simple. Itachi squatted down carefully and took out a bottle of anti-swelling spray and a roll of bandage from his ninja tool bag. Ninjas have to face a lot of things outside, and the necessary first aid measures and equipment may very well save their lives. "Brother, I'm fine. Dad will be unhappy if he sees me." Sasuke pouted. He thought a night's rest would be enough. It was totally unnecessary. Suddenly Sasuke was stunned for a moment and asked, "Brother, how do you know that my classmate is not simple?" "Sasuke, look at your arm. It's like this. It means his strength is greater than yours. You probably took his attack. You can still win. It means your opponent must be hiding his strength." Itachi said this with a smile, but in fact he was a little puzzled as to who could beat Sasuke like this. "Humph, you." Sasuke was a little angry at the moment. No wonder he felt that his victory was a little inexplicable. It turned out that Uzumaki Naruto was pretending to be exhausted. His brother was right. People's physical fitness is proportional. Basically, there are no strong guys with weak physical strength. That guy has a strong build and obviously exercises regularly, so he must have good physical strength. That guy really lost to me on purpose. I will definitely beat him next time. Brother, you have to teach me how to practice." Sasuke clenched his fists. Well, Itachi carried Sasuke on his back again, and the two of them walked away laughing, their shadows stretching long against the evening sun. On the other hand, Naruto had taken the book he borrowed from the library home and returned it after a week. In the ninja school, it was different from in the village. Although the ninja in the library hated him, he still gave him the book. Naruto borrowed 3 books in total, one of which was a detailed explanation of illusions, a book specifically introducing illusions and some basic illusion principles. It also records some hand seals related to illusions and how to deal with them when you are caught in an illusion. There is no record of some methods of practicing illusion. The essence of illusion is to deceive the enemy's senses by mobilizing chakra through hand seals. Those who have strong mental strength and talent for illusion basically take the illusion route, such as Yuhi Kurenai. His genjutsu can even rival the Sharingan. Of course, I'm referring to genjutsu below the Mangekyo, but the Uchiha clan doesn't just rely on genjutsu, so they probably wouldn't be a match for the Uchiha in a fight. Of course, I'm referring to genjutsu on the same level. As for the other book, it is a detailed explanation of physical skills, which contains many training methods for basic physical skills. Naruto felt that he had gained a lot. In his mind, Principles of Illusion +5. Principles of Illusion +6, Basic Taijutsu Understanding +3, Basic Taijutsu Understanding +2. Just flipping through it for a few times, Naruto felt voices popping up in his head. His understanding of illusions also instantly became more profound. As for the relatively small increase in taijutsu, Naruto guessed that it might be because he had already included some basic taijutsu in his normal training. As for the other book, it is about basic trap making. Most of the books in the library are basic. It is estimated that most of the truly valuable ones are hidden in the professional book collections of major families in Konoha. But Naruto was already very satisfied. Basics are sometimes very important. Naruto also saw a very good book, but the maximum he could borrow was 3. The name of that book is Chakra Properties and Detailed Explanation of Seals. Naruto couldn't wait to start flipping through the book. With Naruto's current memory and comprehension, plus the help of the ability of God rewards hard work, Naruto easily absorbed the contents of the book. Naruto was immersed in the world of the book. When he raised his head, he twisted his sore neck and looked again. It was already midnight. Although Naruto read very quickly, he still didn't finish the book until midnight. After reading the 3 books, Naruto felt that his knowledge of illusions, physical techniques, and trap settings had deepened a lot, and he felt like someone who had been immersed in this field for many years. Naruto felt that his knowledge of traps had improved greatly, and his mind couldn't help but think of how to make traps and how to improve on previous traps. The reason why Naruto chose this book on elementary trap making is because he wanted to spend most of his time practicing. Learning how to make traps would make hunting easier. Slowly closing the textbook, Naruto prepared to go to sleep. Although he had already mastered all the knowledge in it, his understanding even exceeded the content in the book. Naruto did not plan to return the books in his hand to the library tomorrow. After all, remembering and understanding 3 books in one night was too much of a task. It is already good enough for most people to have a photographic memory. Unlike me, I not only have a nearly photographic memory, but also have a cheating ability that seems like hard work pays off. Chapter 11. In the early morning of the rising sun, Naruto dressed neatly and prepared to go to the ninja school. After taking a glance at his hut, Naruto decided to go out. Even though he went to bed very late, Naruto was quite excited now. He had taken another step forward on the road to becoming stronger. With Naruto's current mental strength, he might feel mentally uncomfortable if he didn't sleep for 3 days. 4 hours of rest every day is enough for Naruto to recuperate. Although Naruto only slept for 2 hours last night, he couldn't stop feeling happy. Naruto walked out of the room. He was the only one living around. The villagers who lived here before had moved away because he was a so-called demon fox. Naruto was happy to have some peace and quiet. Naruto ran quickly on the road and soon arrived at the school. He greeted Hinata as usual, which made Hinata blush slightly. Naruto then took out the book in his hand to review again. Although he had basically mastered the contents of the book, reviewing it would still bring different gains. Illusion Principle +2. Illusion Principle +2. Spirit +1. What a nice smell. The voice that slowly came from his mind made Naruto feel like the sound of nature. Hinata looked at Naruto with a slightly curious look, and her eyes fell on the book that Naruto was reading. The book explained the contents of illusion. According to what Hinata knew, it should be content that will be taught next year. She didn't expect Naruto to start learning this knowledge so early. Hinata couldn't help but look at Naruto's profile and was a little dazed. The serious Naruto was really handsome. After an unknown amount of time, Naruto suddenly saw Hinata staring at him in a daze without moving. Naruto waved his hand in front of Hinata's face and said, "Hinata, is there something on my face?" Hinata suddenly came back to her senses, blushed, and whispered, "No, it's just that Naruto-kun today is a little handsome." Ha ha ha, Hinata is cute today too. Naruto happily touched Hinata's head, which immediately made Hinata's face turn red and she seemed to be about to faint. Naruto quickly let go of his hand. These days, Naruto touches Hinata's head almost every day. After all, feelings should be cultivated from childhood. As for Haruno Sakura, does she smell as good as Hinata? After a few days of getting used to it, Hinata's reaction became much smaller. After all, there is only a difference between something happening once and countless times. Uchiha Sasuke entered the classroom at some point and stared at Naruto casually. Sasuke, who had a little baby fat, pretended to have a cold look, which made the few nymphomaniacs scream again and again. Sasuke secretly looked at Naruto, and saw that Naruto was still flirting with Hinata, and then he started reading the book on the table again. Due to the distance and angle, Sasuke did not see clearly what was written on Naruto's book, but he was sure that it was not the books he had given out before. Ahem. Everyone, be quiet. Next, open the textbook and turn to Chapter 1, Konoha and the Will of Fire. Iruka interrupted everyone's playfulness with the sound of a bell, and Naruto closed the book that explained the principles of illusion and carefully put it in the drawer of his school bag. He took out the book that Naruto felt had no ideological value, but there was no other way, as these would all be tested and counted towards the liberal arts score. But Naruto didn't care. The liberal arts score only accounted for 20%, and the rest was martial arts, including combat. But Naruto still read it several times quickly and memorized it. With Naruto's memory, even Shikamaru couldn't compare to him, but Shikamaru's memory was not much worse, and he was almost at the level of remembering everything he saw. Sasuke was still secretly looking at Naruto, and suddenly he seemed to have discovered something. Naruto's body was shaking slightly, Sasuke's eyes moved down, and he could vaguely see Naruto's hands were shaking constantly. What is this doing? Sasuke suddenly felt curious. No, he is practicing hand seals. Sasuke suddenly discovered Naruto's intention. This guy is still practicing hand seals at this time. At this time, we should try our best to gain as much time as possible to become stronger. Well, how could this guy, who is so powerful, ignore his own shortcomings? Sasuke refers to physical strength. Sasuke has not actually trained his physical strength much. Naruto works so hard, so he shouldn't be weaker than him in physical strength. It's really like his brother said, this guy is hiding his abilities. If Sasuke had been influenced by real culture, he would understand that Naruto was rolling. Sasuke angrily took out another book from the drawer. It contained some brief hand seals, which Naruto was practicing. After he finished learning, Naruto planned to borrow the advanced version of the book on the properties of chakra and detailed explanation of hand seals that he saw in the library last time. What is recorded in this book is actually enough for the students of the ninja school to learn for 1 year. Next year, as the amount of chakra increases, the school will teach students the three-body technique. Sasuke took out the book and started practicing according to it. It's just that Sasuke had never practiced hand seals before, so now he seemed a little clumsy. He could only make 2 hand seals in 1 second, and sometimes he would make mistakes. Sasuke's slightly violent movements and his head down attracted Iruka's attention. As a Chunin, Iruka may not be as good as a Chunin who specializes in combat, but he still easily saw what Sasuke was doing. Seeing Sasuke reading a book on hand seals, he was secretly surprised. As expected of a member of the Uchiha family, he now knew the importance of hand seals. Quickly forming hand seals can save time in performing ninjutsu. Sometimes in battle, a moment's difference can mean life. What he didn't know was that Sasuke just didn't want to fall behind Naruto. Uchiha Sasuke-san, please don't do anything that is not related to this lesson. The above content will be taught later. Seeing that Uchiha Sasuke was not making trouble, Iruka also reminded him, just like before Naruto traveled through time, the teachers in class always didn't like students studying other courses in their own class. Sasuke heard Iruka's voice and couldn't help but blush. Seeing Sasuke nodded and closed the book of hand seals, Iruka slowly began to explain again. As for Sasuke, he looked at Naruto. Naruto also saw Sasuke's gaze and couldn't help but smile at Sasuke. He saw Sasuke's movements and guessed that Sasuke might be learning to practice hand seals from him. However, I have already been able to do 2 things at once, and I have no problem making hand seals and attending classes at the same time. What's more, theoretical courses are very easy for Naruto. Naruto's smile seemed to be mocking Sasuke. Uzumaki Naruto. Sasuke roared internally. Sasuke's chubby face looked a bit ferocious. Naruto was also a bit stunned when he saw Sasuke's look. He didn't know how he had offended him. Sure enough, the second pillar still lacked the beating of society. Ignoring Sasuke, Naruto focused on practicing hand seals. Now Naruto could already perform about 4.5 hand seals per second without making any mistakes, although he was still not as good as Uchiha Itachi who could perform 6 hand seals per second. But with the help of hard work, it shouldn't be a problem for him to surpass Uchiha Itachi in the future. The reason why Naruto learned hand seals was because he wanted to understand the principles of hand seal ninjutsu. Only by understanding it can he simplify it in the future. Naruto doesn't want to be just a general-purpose ball-rolling master like in the original. Although he is very good at making ball rolls, his shortcomings are also obvious. If it weren't for Nine Tails and the halo of the protagonist, he would have died countless times. The Hatake Kakashi in the original work is also known as Hatake 50-50. Precisely because he knows so many ninjutsu, he can basically formulate a strategy and use a variety of attack methods when facing any enemy. Genin at the age of 5, Chunin at the age of 6, Jonin at the age of 12, and Reikiri, which can cut off lightning, was developed at the age of 13. This is an S-level ninjutsu, and before that there was A-level Chidori. From this perspective, Hatake Kakashi is simply a super genius, but later because of the Obito incident, he directly fell, and he has not been promoted to Kage level for many years. This is mainly due to the Sharingan. The Sharingan cannot be turned off on outsiders and will even continue to absorb their own chakra. This also caused Kakashi to become a big mana consumer. However, the slow improvement of Kakashi's strength later was not entirely due to the Sharingan. The main reason is that he is addicted to pornographic stories and is numb to his friend's death. He even gave up his Hatake swordsmanship. But there's no denying Kakashi's talent. Regarding chakra, Naruto said, as this chakra. He calls it Chatanla. There is a power bank in my body, although it cannot be used yet. Naruto was also very puzzled about Nine Tails. Logically speaking, with his mental power, he should be able to enter the mental space, but for some reason he had not yet entered the mental space. Perhaps Nine Tails was still unwilling to see Naruto. Naruto doesn't care and works hard to improve his strength. There will be plenty of opportunities in the future. Soon Iruka's theory class ended, and the next class was a class taught by a teacher named Mizuki, which was also a theory class. Compared to Iruka's class, Mizuki's class was more boring, which made the people led by Shikamaru fall asleep directly. Mizuki is not Iruka. He dares to scold everyone. Many of the little ancestors here are heirs of big families, he can't afford to offend them, but he looked at Naruto with murderous eyes. But he couldn't find any faults, because Naruto behaved very well and listened attentively throughout the whole process. In fact, he was practicing hand seals and thinking about the knowledge in his mind. As long as you don't mobilize the chakra, there is no problem with the seal training. However, if you mobilize the chakra randomly, it will cause serious problems. At the very least, you will need to rest for a few days, and at the worst, your tendons and veins will be damaged. Even worse, you may lose your arms and legs. The afternoon class was still a practical class, which was simple for Naruto. There were kunai throwing training and shuriken training. Naruto performed at the top level in both. The best performer was Uchiha Sasuke. For some reason, Naruto always felt that Sasuke was staring at him. He wouldn't be. Naruto quickly shook his head to drive the terrible idea out of his mind. During the battle training, Naruto fought against Inuzuka Kiba. At the beginning, Inuzuka Kiba vowed to defeat Naruto. A few minutes later, Naruto defeated Inuzuka Kiba and won the respect of Inuzuka Kiba. In his opinion, Naruto's attack and defense were flawless. He estimated that Naruto's strength should be even stronger than this. He was probably just trying to save face for himself. This made Inuzuka Kiba inexplicably have a better impression of Naruto. Even Iruka couldn't help but nod his head after seeing this. There was nothing wrong with Naruto's attack and defense, except that his physical strength was a little lacking. In fact, this was just something Naruto showed on purpose. Even so, it's already very impressive. If Naruto hadn't exposed a little bit of his strength when fighting with Sasuke, he would have had to disguise his strength and barely maintain his position in the top 5 of the class. Naruto was not afraid of the third generation's suspicion. After all, it was a remarkable thing for him to be at the top among so many family children without any teaching. The Anbu members who are secretly monitoring him will not doubt him, because the ability of God's reward for hard work is really pervert. Although Naruto does not have any system or anything like that, Naruto enjoys the process of becoming stronger more, just like getting 10 times the experience points, so cool. After finishing the afternoon class, Naruto went to his training ground again, and the feeling of being monitored came to his mind again. Naruto used Kagura's mind eye to sense, and to Naruto's surprise, there was only one person left monitoring him. Did I gain some more trust from the third generation? Naruto didn't bother much, but that was a good thing. Running quickly on the road to the back mountain, Naruto was preparing to practice as usual. Suddenly, Naruto heard a voice and couldn't help but be a little curious. Naruto walked towards the location of the voice and found that 200 meters away from his training place, there was a little kid practicing here. The reason why I call him a little kid is because the person in front of me is not very old. He looks to be about 6 or 7 years old. At this moment, sweat has soaked his entire body. But the training did not stop, and finally kept shouting, 1397. 1398. 13. It was as if sound was his motivation. Looking at the young man in front of me who is training hard, let's just call him a young man. A bowl cut, thick eyebrows, and a white shirt with a slightly grayish-yellow tint. Although he was a little different from the figure in Naruto's mind, Naruto still recognized him. He was Rock Lee in the original work, also known as Rock Lee. Now he has not put on that strange green tights, but his life of hard training has already begun. Naruto still has some admiration for this young man. Every hard-working person should not be underestimated. In the original novel, Lee beat Sasuke when he first appeared. When he opened the 5th gate of 8 inner gates, he had the ability to rival the average Jonin for a short period of time. However, he was eventually defeated by Gaara, who, although only 12 years old, had already killed several ordinary Jonin. That was also a period of rapid progress for Naruto and Sasuke. Naruto grew from an ordinary genin to an elite chunin in half a year, and with the help of rolling balls, he could even reach the level of a special jonin. Uchiha Sasuke was similar. With the Sharingan and Chidori, he also exceeded the average elite chunin. But that only refers to pure strength. In other aspects, he is still far behind. Of course, this refers to the original work, and now with the arrival of Naruto, the butterfly's wings have flapped. After practicing squats, Shaoli began to punch in front of him continuously. In Naruto's opinion, this kind of exercise was a bit inefficient. With the passive growth of God's reward for hard work and the basic physical skills he mastered last night, Naruto still has some insights into the practice of physical skills. Hello, can I interrupt you for a moment? Naruto's voice was clear and loud. Shaoli, who was interrupted, looked up and saw a boy who looked about the same as himself standing in front of him. He had deep eyes and an indescribable temperament. Looking at Naruto in front of him, Shaoli felt a little strange, but he still stopped. Looking at Naruto puzzledly, he said, "Hello. What can I do for you?" "You are practicing taijutsu, right?" Naruto said softly. "That's right. I firmly believe that even if I don't know any ninjutsu or genjutsu, I can still reach the top with my taijutsu. And become a great ninja." There is a dazzling light in Rock Lee's eyes with that bowl-cut hairstyle. "I also believe you can become a great taijutsu ninja," Naruto exclaimed with a smile. "Hey, do you also think that you can become a real ninja with taijutsu?" Rock Lee thought he would be laughed at by Naruto, but unexpectedly Naruto actually agreed with his ninja way. For a moment, he couldn't help but burst into tears. This was the first time he received recognition from his peers. Although he had long been accustomed to being laughed at by others, he still felt a sense of joy from the heart when he was recognized by others. "Yeah, I think taijutsu has a lot of potential." What Naruto said was not false. In later times, after the emergence of the Otsutsuki clan, ninjutsu was of almost no use at all. The only ones who could be relied upon were senjutsu and taijutsu. Naruto and Sasuke's taijutsu were also honed to a very high level in the battles with the Otsutsuki. But Otsutsuki not only has physical skills, he also has the ability of eye skills. So Naruto will not give up practicing taijutsu. If possible, Naruto will also develop taijutsu-related moves, such as the 6 styles that Naruto is currently conceiving. In addition, the power of senjutsu is also what Naruto wants to obtain. Obtaining the power of senjutsu means having the key to the Super Kage level and 6 Paths level. In the Hokage world, there are several ways to become 6 Paths level. Collect the tailed beasts to become 10 Tails Jinchuriki, condense the truth-seeking ball. Achieve 6 Paths level powerhouse. For this level of powerhouse, the lifespan and life level have been transformed, but there is still a limit to the lifespan. The second is that the Sage of 6 Paths personally takes action and bestows the power of 6 Paths, allowing one to briefly reach the level of 6 Paths. This is the case with Naruto and Sasuke in the original work, but the current Naruto is not inclined to this approach. Another thing is that he has practiced the magic to an extremely high level. Although he has never taken action, the master of the three holy places is definitely very powerful. He deceived the Sage of Six Paths into taking action against Kaguya in person, and even taught the Sage of Six Paths to practice the magic, and he survived after the physical body of the Sage of Six Paths died. It is probably a Six Paths level being, but it is probably no match for the Otsutsuki people. Moreover, Senjutsu can be regarded as the real native power of the ninja world. Chakra was actually brought by Kaguya, so Kaguya is also known as the ancestor of chakra. There is also the bloodline net, which integrates the chakra attributes of wind, thunder, water, fire, earth, yin and yang. However, no one in the original work has ever been able to reach Six Paths mode in this way without any external help. The last one is the Tenseigan mode, but Naruto doesn't know yet whether Tenseigan's power has reached the true Six Paths level, but it is thought that it should have reached it because the truth-seeking ball appeared on Tonari in the original work. However, perhaps due to some trickery, Tonari was defeated by Naruto in 9 tails before his power reached its peak. And judging from the different levels of Six Paths in the original work, the Six Paths level should also be divided into strong and weak. Coming back to his senses, Naruto looked at Shaoli in front of him and said, although you can rely on taijutsu to reach the pinnacle, taijutsu is not practiced like this. You've been practicing the basics of running, kicking, push-ups, squats, and straight punches. Although these movements can help you improve your physical fitness, as time goes by, it is extremely difficult to rely on this progress. But not everyone has the ability to get what God rewards for hard work. Naruto added silently in his mind. Naruto picked out and told Shaoli the basics of physical skills that he had summarized. When Shaoli heard Naruto's methods of practicing physical skills, he was astounded for a moment, because in Shaoli's opinion, these methods were simply linked together, and they were something he had never heard of in ninja school. What he had been practicing before was what his teachers at school had taught him. After years of practice, he was able to improve his physical fitness, and even did weight training afterwards. However, he is still young and it is not advisable for him to do weight training, otherwise he will probably not grow tall. In this world, physical skills are not taken seriously, because physical training requires not only talent, but also huge financial support and many years of time. Few people can persevere. Learning an advanced ninjutsu is equivalent to several years of practice. In this world where battles can break out at any time, who would concentrate on learning physical skills? Might Guy and Rock Lee were able to achieve what ordinary people could not because they could only learn physical skills and persisted in doing so. This is also the reason why Naruto is willing to give some advice to Shaoli. As for whether he can become Naruto's helper in the future, Naruto does not have any hope. In fact, Naruto has already slowly imagined a set of physical training in his mind that can further enhance his physical fitness, but Naruto doesn't dare to hand it over to Shaoli now. What he just told Shaoli is actually enough for Shaoli to practice for 2 years. If the things taught in school were practiced for years, they might cause hidden injuries, which is why there are fewer physical ninjas. After mastering the basic physical skills, you can start to learn the power-generating techniques. However, these contents are kept hidden and basically not taught to students in ninja schools. As for Naruto's thoughts on physical skills, Naruto dare not reveal them at this stage. These can be understood as Naruto's natural talent and his own summary. In addition, the third Hokage does not pay much attention to physical skills. If Naruto's physical skills can lead to the strengthening of the overall physical skills ninjas, then Naruto will surely fall into a serious loss. No matter how evil you are, if you behave unreasonably, there might be a problem. Woo woo woo, you are so kind, telling me such a precious training method. Rock Lee rushed over excitedly, grabbed Naruto's legs, and rubbed snot and tears on Naruto's body. Get away from me, I'm not gay. Naruto suddenly felt a chill and kicked Shaoli away. Shaoli was kicked against the side of a tree and was shocked to find that he didn't feel any pain. This made Shaoli feel that Naruto was a genius in physical skills. Although he was a little confused by what Naruto said, what did he mean and chicken old? I want to eat grass. The chicken is old. Although he may not have meant it, Lee knew that he had offended Naruto. Shaoli stood up quickly, bowed deeply, and said, I'm so sorry. I was just too excited. Thank you for teaching me such a valuable cultivation method. Rock Lee's eyes seemed to be shining when he looked at Naruto. Naruto was not only the first man who recognized his ability to endure, but also the first person who taught him physical training. Naturally, there was a strange uncle in green clothes who recognized me before and said that he would consider taking me as his disciple after observing me for a period of time. But what Xiao Li hopes more is to get recognition from his peers. After hearing Naruto's insights on physical skills, Xiao Li looked at Naruto with admiration. Hello, may I ask your name? Xiao Li unconsciously used honorifics when addressing Naruto. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. You don't have to be so polite, this is just my humble opinion. Naruto also responded with a smile. Indeed, his physical skills were not yet so earth-shattering, but they were much better than what he was taught in school. Naruto-kun, can I train with you? Xiao Li asked again, his eyes full of desire. Of course, come with me. Naruto brought Xiao Li to his previous training ground. Looking at this simple but well-equipped training ground, Xiao Li was a little surprised. Is this your training ground, Naruto-kun? Xiao Li couldn't help but take a closer look at the surrounding layout and environment, and found that this place was much better than the place where he practiced. You can just call me Naruto, you're welcome. I usually train here. Naruto said as he walked towards the direction where he usually set traps. Lee said nothing and just followed Naruto forward with his eyes flickering with curiosity. After a while, the two men walked to the side of the trap. There was no prey in the trap. It seemed that the prey had also learned its lesson. Naruto looked at the trap he had made before again. After learning how to set up the trap, Naruto suddenly felt that the trap in front of him was so simple. It was demolished directly. Naruto used the knowledge he had learned before to make a few traps and place them around, which looked a bit hidden. After doing all this, Naruto turned around and said to Xiao Li, Xiao Li, next time you come here, be careful of the traps here. Apart from me, no one comes here. Naruto-kun. Naruto, what are you setting up these traps for? Xiao Li wanted to call him Naruto-kun, but suddenly remembered that Naruto asked him to call him by his name. This is the trap I use for hunting. It is also my source of meat. Only sufficient meat can ensure better training. Naruto's firm words made Xiao Liu a little hesitant to speak. Seeing Xiao Li's hesitation, Naruto said, You don't think I'm a family member or something, I'm an orphan. Ah, excuse me, Naruto, I didn't know you were an orphan. Xiao Li was a little surprised and apologized quickly. He didn't expect that Naruto was an orphan like himself. It's okay, Xiao Li. I'm going to start training next. Naruto started training as usual. His training intensity was no weaker than Li's, and he completed it faster. He also had some training methods that Li didn't know about. Some of them are the training methods that Naruto had told Xiao Li before. Xiao Li started to train according to the method Naruto had told him before. For a while, there were only two figures training hard under the morning sun. Time just passes slowly. Since the last time, Xiao Li often waited for Naruto at the place where Naruto was practicing. After finding out some information about Naruto, Xiao Li was a little shocked. He didn't expect that Naruto was actually 1 year younger than him. Naruto's maturity, hard work and strength are deeply imprinted in Li's heart. Although Naruto is younger than him, Li has already regarded Naruto as an elder brother. After learning about how Naruto was treated in the village, Xiao Li took the initiative to help Naruto buy food. It was mainly some green vegetables and the like. As an orphan, Xiao Li didn't have much money to buy meat, and he couldn't eat it often. But after following Naruto, he had enough meat every day. Combined with the training methods taught by Naruto, Xiao Li clearly felt his own progress. After saying goodbye to Xiao Li, Naruto returned home and lay on the bed. Looking at the ceiling, should I develop a way to communicate without being discovered by Anbu? Naruto felt deeply annoyed by Anbu. Every time he didn't dare to let go of his training was because of Anbu's existence. He even didn't dare to teach Xiao Li the training method he sorted out during this period, for fear of attracting the attention of the third-generation Old Fox and Nabekiage Danzo. If it weren't for the ability of God rewards hard work, these physical training would be useless to Naruto. Naruto needs more intense training. But by increasing the intensity of his training, Naruto will surely reveal a physical quality close to Chunin's, and if coupled with sufficient chakra and ninjutsu, Naruto will surely be extremely dazzling. Naruto began to think of ways to communicate without making any sound. A secret code. No, you can't underestimate the qualities of a ninja. If only there was a phone. Naruto suddenly had an idea. Yes. Why not make a phone call? Chakra is a fusion of human spirit and life energy, and has the ability to transmit information. There are even the chakra consciousness bodies of the 4th Hokage and Uzumaki Kushina in Naruto's body, which shows that chakra is a carrier that can carry information very well. If I could convert sound into chakra, and then into sound, it could appear in another person's mind, and I could even form my own consciousness in someone else's mind, so there would be no difficulty in communicating. Naruto sat cross-legged, causing the Anbu who was monitoring him to mistakenly believe that Naruto was refining chakra. In fact, Naruto is constantly thinking about it in his mind. If Naruto were to develop it himself, it would probably take several years, but Naruto has a plugin. Chakra Sound Transmission Concept +2. Chakra Sound Transmission Concept +3. From time to time, a voice like heavenly music came to Naruto's mind. The next day, Naruto, who had been thinking all night, was unable to fully realize his ideas. Either the signal was unstable or the sentences were unclear. Naruto kept experimenting in his mind. Naruto built a place to store information in his mind, using chakra as a carrier. The sound came from here and then transmitted to the brain. This is to prevent damage to the brain. After a few failures, Naruto felt that if he was given a few more days, he should be able to successfully develop it. Naruto was still working on the ideas in his mind at school. 2 more days passed and Naruto felt that he was mentally exhausted. Hinata, keep an eye on him for a while I take a break. Naruto said to Hinata who was beside him, and then he just fell asleep on the table. Sasuke, who often pays attention to Naruto, has been practicing hard for a while and can now practice his hand seals while listening to the class. Seeing Naruto sleeping on the table, Sasuke didn't think that Naruto was being lazy. In his mind, he kept imagining Naruto training to exhaustion every day after he returned. Uzumaki Naruto. Sasuke felt that he must work harder. Although he has always been the best in everyone's eyes, he felt that if Uzumaki Naruto did not hide his strength, he might not be able to defeat him. Another 2 days have passed. Naruto showed a surprised expression. He finally succeeded, and even broke through it. Naruto called this move he developed the Chakra Dialogue Room or Chakra Chat Room. Not only can it transmit sound, but even after Naruto has established a chakra consciousness space, he can use chakra links to allow different people to show their appearance in it. It can support single and multiplayer. The communication between the two people takes place in their minds and will not be noticed by outsiders at all. This was created by Naruto based on the chat group in his previous life. Chakra acts as a signal and also as a carrier. There is still room for improvement afterwards. In the classroom, Naruto looked at Hinata who was listening to the class attentively, and suddenly wanted to try out the chakra dialogue room he developed. Carefully link the chakra over. Hinata, can you hear me? Hinata is listening to the teacher attentively. In this class, the one with the best theoretical performance is Haruno Sakura, followed by Hinata. Hinata was a little surprised because she actually heard Naruto's voice in her mind. She was quite sure that Naruto didn't speak. She tilted her head to glance at Naruto, who was staring at the blackboard and didn't say anything. Am I hallucinating? I was actually thinking about Naruto-kun during class. Hinata's face instantly turned red, and her fair neck and face were stained with a bright red. Ha ha ha, Hinata is so cute today. Hinata, you heard me right, it was indeed me speaking in your head. Don't be surprised, this is a new technique I developed, you have to keep it secret. Naruto's voice sounded in her mind again, and Hinata was surprised. It was indeed Naruto-kun who could develop such a magical ninjutsu. Try to use your chakra to touch the light in your mind. Hinata felt it and found there was indeed a light spot. He slowly mobilized his chakra and touched the light spot. Hinata then felt a suction force taking his chakra to somewhere. At this moment, Hinata's consciousness carrier has been formed with the help of the chakra dialogue room, and Hinata feels that the chakra in his body seems to be a little less, but it has basically no effect. When they arrived at this space, Naruto was already standing in front of Hinata, and Hinata could still sense the situation outside, but was a little distracted. There should be no problem after he got used to it. In front of Naruto was an open space, green with blue sky and white clouds. This was just a consciousness space. These scenes were actually thought up by Naruto and could be changed at any time. But now only Naruto has the authority to change the background. However, it is very simple to obtain permission to change it. All Naruto needs to do is record the other party's chakra properties and allow the permission to change. Naruto-kun. This is amazing. Hinata felt everything in front of her was magical, and gently touching the scene around her, Hinata felt as if it were real. Actually, this is because Hinata is now a conscious being. Naruto-kun, how did you do that? Ha ha ha, I worked hard for a long time to research this. Chakra is a very magical energy, and it is composed of human spirit and life energy in cells. Because of the existence of human spirit, it can naturally become a carrier for spreading information and Naruto spoke a lot. Hinata just felt that Naruto was awesome. Although she didn't understand what Naruto was saying, Hinata thought that Naruto was very powerful. The two exchanged several exchanges in the conversation room and then exited the consciousness space. Naruto also told Hinata the method to enter the consciousness space. Naruto built a chakra conversation room in his mind, which was equivalent to the server in his previous life. As long as you connect to the server through chakra, you will be connected to the consciousness space. The current consciousness space is maintained by Naruto alone. If other people also learn this ninjutsu, they can build a larger consciousness space together. Naruto was able to achieve this thanks to his strong mental strength. Soon, this class was over, and the next class was to refine chakra. After all, chakra is the foundation. There are not extracurricular practical classes every day. For example, today, the whole day is filled with theoretical courses. However, this course passed quickly. After school, Naruto said goodbye to Hinata and hurried to his training ground. On the way, Naruto, who had a strong sense of perception, suddenly discovered a small tail. Naruto used his perception to check, and a familiar chakra appeared in Naruto's perception. It was actually Uchiha Sasuke. For some reason, he actually followed him. Feeling Sasuke's poor tracking skills, Naruto almost couldn't help but expose him. There is also Anbu who supervises me on a daily basis. Naruto ignored Sasuke, but in order to maintain his daily personality, Naruto continued on his journey at the same speed as usual. When he arrived, Shaoli was already waiting here. Shaoli did not start practicing, but was quietly waiting for Naruto's arrival. But there were actually 2 wild rabbits beside him, and there were several big fish in the bucket under his feet. Naruto couldn't help but smile when he saw Shaoli. Shaoli and his friends got out of school earlier than them. Naruto was already used to this kind of thing. Naruto walked to Lee's side, took the prey from Lee's side, and walked to the cave that was created before. The cave now looked very different. With Rock Lee's arrival, Naruto widened the cave a little more. The two of them built this temporary camp together, which contained some green vegetables, all of which were bought by Shaoli. Naruto gave his money to Shaoli to purchase these ingredients. Before Lee came into being, Naruto used to find wild vegetables in the mountains and forests. With Naruto's skills, even ordinary wild vegetables became delicious. The reason why Shaoli is waiting for Naruto now is actually waiting for Naruto to cook. After a few times, Shaoli was conquered by Naruto's cooking skills. Shaoli, set up the pot. Yes, Shaoli yelled seriously. Before training, replenish your nutrition first, and then turn the nutrients you eat into strength. A balanced diet can increase the effect of training. This is what Naruto said. Although Shaoli didn't know how powerful he was, after a few days, the fatigue from exercise was not as strong as before. Little Sasuke in the dark was watching the two of them. He thought Naruto was secretly training here, but he didn't expect Naruto to be having a picnic here. The aroma of food gradually drifted into Sasuke's nose, making Sasuke, who had not eaten yet, instantly hungry. The stomach made an unconscious sound, which instantly attracted Shaoli's attention. Who is it? Shaoli's eyes instantly turned towards the bush where Sasuke was hiding. Seeing that he was discovered, Sasuke had no choice but to come out. This scene made him very embarrassed. I'm just passing by, do you believe it? Seeing Naruto and Lee looking at him like idiots, Sasuke gritted his teeth and said angrily, Uzumaki Naruto. Fight me. Shaoli, this is my classmate. Looking at the nervous Shaoli, Naruto explained to Shaoli, then turned to look at Sasuke and said, Sasuke classmate, don't be anxious, you haven't eaten yet. Let's eat together first. Sasuke swallowed, the delicious smell wafting in front of them reaching Sasuke's nose again, and his stomach growled again. Humph, I'm just worried that not having enough food will affect my performance. Making an excuse for himself, Sasuke sat down. Lee also relaxed when he heard Naruto say Sasuke was his classmate. Naruto brought a bowl and chopsticks to Sasuke, and Sasuke hurriedly began to try it, picking up a piece of meat and putting it in his mouth. Sasuke originally thought that it was just a good taste, but his taste buds were instantly covered with a delicious taste. Sasuke's eyes lit up instantly. It's so delicious, could this be the reason why Uzumaki Naruto is so strong? Of course, this thought only lasted for a moment. In Sasuke's intuition, Naruto must be very strong. Judging from his previous strength, the hand seals he practiced in class, and the surrounding arrangements, Naruto must be very strong. Patting his belly, Sasuke felt very satisfied. Although the food and equipment in front of him looked very simple, he felt that even if his brother fed him the meatballs himself, they would probably taste like this. Sasuke, who was full and satisfied, patted his stomach with satisfaction and said casually, Naruto, do you come here to practice every day? Of course, how can youth slack off so easily? Sasuke. Xiao Li said suddenly. Looking at Xiao Li's shining teeth, Sasuke felt a little shocked. After eating, Sasuke no longer had any intention of fighting Naruto right now. Instead, he became interested in the training ground where Naruto and Rock Lee were. This place was like Naruto and Rock Lee's secret base. In fact, it is indeed a secret base belonging to the two of them. This is full of temptation for Sasuke, who is still a child. How cool it is to have a secret base of his own. With the friendship gained from having meals together, Sasuke consciously incorporated himself into Naruto's small group. Can I practice with you? Sasuke put forward his own idea. If he followed Naruto to practice personally, he would definitely be able to clearly see Naruto's strength. This was Sasuke's inner thought. And for Sasuke, although Naruto is a little strange, compared to other children, Naruto has an inexplicable maturity, which makes Sasuke somewhat convinced of Naruto. Oh, do you want to practice with me too? Naruto was a little surprised. Why did Uchiha Sasuke seem so clingy now? Ever since their last battle, Naruto found that Sasuke was always secretly paying attention to him. Naruto doesn't think he has such a strong attraction. After thinking about it, there is only one possibility, that is Ashura and Indra's chakra. It's like fate that makes the two of them entangled, which can be seen from the original work. With more contact with Uchiha Sasuke, Naruto was worried that it would attract the attention of the third generation and Uchiha Itachi, which would not be in line with his purpose of keeping a low profile. If I reject Sasuke, he will probably find a way to get back at me. In that case, I might as well accept Uchiha Sasuke. Suddenly Naruto's eyes lit up and he said, Ahem. It's not impossible for you to join us, but I have one request, that is, if you can bring me the method of shadow clone technique, I will allow you to join us. Xiao Li, show him your skills. As Naruto winked at Lee, Lee understood, stood up, and kicked at the wooden stakes they usually used for training. Lee's speed was so fast that Sasuke was a little unable to react. Snap, snap, snap. Under Sasuke's surprised gaze, Rock Lee directly kicked several wooden stakes on the ground and broke them. Although these wooden stakes were not the special wooden stakes used in the ninja training ground, the fact that he could kick them apart showed that Rock Lee's level had reached that of a senior student. See, if you just train hard with Naruto, you can reach my level. Xiao Li understood Naruto's eyes. It was obvious that Naruto cared a lot about the ninjutsu called Shadow Clone. Naruto, you are indeed extraordinary, Sasuke said with a little surprise. The bowl-cut boy in front of him was obviously following Naruto, so Naruto's level was self-evident, at least he would not be worse than the thick-browed boy in front of him. One day I will surpass you, Naruto. Sasuke is obviously very confident in his talent. As long as he practices with Naruto and the others every day, he will definitely surpass Naruto soon with his talent. Sasuke, who has not yet been beaten by society, obviously has a mysterious confidence in himself. Sasuke narrowed his eyes, the expression on his face kept changing. The main reason he proposed to train with Naruto was to observe Naruto's strength at all times. But little did he know that his thoughts were basically shown on his face. After all, he was still a child. Itachi protected Sasuke very well. Unlike Itachi, who followed his father to the battlefield when he was a child and understood the cruelty of war early on. Shadow clone technique. Just wait for me, Sasuke yelled in response. Then he started running towards home. Xiaoli looked at Sasuke, who ran away in shame, and said in a strange tone, "Naruto, do you want the shadow clone technique?" Naruto said nothing as he turned and headed towards the training grounds. Suddenly, a voice sounded in Xiaoli's mind, "Xiaoli, don't be surprised. This is the ninjutsu I developed. In order to prevent the walls from having ears, some important things, I will tell you here to prevent our conversation from being leaked." Naruto didn't tell Lee about Anbu, it wasn't the right time yet. That's why there is such a saying. Next, I will tell you some advanced training methods for physical skills, as well as my training methods for the 6 styles. Naruto said in the consciousness space. At the same time, Naruto also inadvertently strengthened his mental strength to prevent Rock Lee from making a sound due to losing his composure. Through the simple knowledge of illusion he had learned before, coupled with Naruto's own exploration and huge mental strength, Naruto was already able to mobilize his mental power. This caused Xiaoli to have almost no emotional waves. Although he was shocked, he accepted it in a short time. This magical consciousness space made him feel that Naruto was a super genius. And now, Xiaoli slowly accepted the physical skills knowledge passed down by Naruto. The moment he came into contact with this knowledge, Xiaoli's body trembled involuntarily. The two people's external bodies did not stop at all, but a small part of their consciousness was scattered in the conscious space, just like a person driving and talking on the phone at the same time. It's not that they can't do both at the same time, but their attention will be dispersed. Xiaoli felt the knowledge passed on by Naruto, which included many ways of exerting force in physical techniques and methods of physical training, as well as Naruto's ideas and training methods on the 6 styles. Although it was not perfect yet, it could definitely be practiced. This gave Xiaoli a huge shock. Naruto actually shared such a precious thing with him without hesitation. Looking at the still somewhat immature 6-style conjecture, Xiaoli knew that this was probably all of Naruto's knowledge of physical techniques. Although Xiaoli usually looks a bit innocent, he knows what these mean. These are basically the core contents of the family. Naruto. At this moment, Xiaoli didn't know what to say, and his voice seemed a little choked. Stop being so pretentious. Naruto punched Lee lightly on the shoulder with his fist. Suddenly, Lee saw Naruto was stunned. Naruto said in a very serious tone, "Lee, if one day, I will become an enemy of Konoha, or even the whole world, will you stand by me?" When Xiaoli heard Naruto's slightly cold words, he was stunned for a moment. At this moment, he felt that Naruto had many secrets. Become an enemy of Konoha. This idea had never entered Xiaoli's mind. He was shocked by Naruto's words. As for making an enemy of the world, this idea was too far-fetched. Naruto, why would you think that? Xiaoli hesitated for a moment and did not answer immediately. Xiaoli, this world is not that simple, and Konoha is not purely peaceful. As for me, my identity is more than just an orphan. As for why, I can't answer you now. Naruto didn't intend to tell Xiaoli everything. He said this just to see if Xiaoli could receive his true training. If Rock Lee insists on standing on Konoha's side, then what is given to Rock Lee now is everything. Naruto has recorded this conversation with his mental power. If Rock Lee leaks this conversation, Naruto's tampered mental power will explode and turn Rock Lee into an idiot. Based on Naruto's understanding of Rock Lee would not tell anyone what he said, but Naruto took out an insurance policy. After all, it was for his own safety. Once exposed to Konoha, he would be doomed. Xiaoli recalled everything in his mind, showing his iconic teeth, and said, "I am very excited to be recognized by Naruto-kun. My ninja way is to blossom for my friends. If something dangerous happens to Naruto-kun one day, please step over my dead body first." Naruto smiled. He was very happy at this moment. The two of them didn't continue talking afterwards and continued their previous training. Xiaoli felt that he was closer to Naruto. He could feel that Naruto had many secrets, like the fact that Naruto was able to obtain so many training methods at his current age, and Naruto's deep gaze and maturity, which made Xiaoli feel that Naruto was carrying a lot. However, no matter what Naruto wants to do, I will firmly accompany Naruto. My ninja way is always blooming for Naruto-kun. Although Xiaoli is still young, he was conquered by Naruto's sincerity and the charm of Naruto. He is also willing to give everything for his friends. If Naruto-kun is ever in danger, just step over my body first. In Xiaoli's heart, Naruto is like a beam of light, shining into his heart. The former Might Guy was a warm breeze, and now Naruto is like a beam of sunshine, completely opening his heart. Might Guy and Xiao Li do not have a deep relationship now, because Xiao Li has not yet been officially accepted as a disciple by Might Guy, and the relationship between the two has not yet been cultivated. Although Rock Lee has always said that he can become a great ninja through physical skills, he is also confused. And now, he saw the promise of taijutsu in the 6 styles that Naruto had given him. After knowing that Naruto had been carrying something, Xiao Li practiced even harder. The people in the Hokage world mature early and have an extremely high level of awareness. People like Rock Lee even regard what they say as the way of ninja and follow it throughout their lives. The next day, classes went on as usual, but Naruto still felt a little relieved. After all, he was alone before, but now with Xiao Li, the feeling of having enemies everywhere was finally less. Today, Uchiha Sasuke did not come to Naruto immediately. Maybe he had not yet learned the training method of Shadow Clone, or he chose to refuse. No matter which option he chooses, Naruto will not lose money, as it is a no-cost business. Naruto still practiced as usual, and teasing Hinata on a daily basis was one of the few fun things he did. On the 5th day, Sasuke caught up with Naruto again, but this time Naruto did not leave the ninja school, because after leaving the ninja school, Anbu would catch up with him again. "Why are you following me?" Sasuke looked at Naruto and said hesitantly, "Don't you need the Shadow Clone training method? I've learned it. Now I can practice with you, right?" "Oh, are you really planning to practice with me? Let me make it clear first, you can practice with me, but don't reveal your relationship with me, and don't tell anyone about my strength at school," Naruto said softly. Sasuke listened to Naruto's conditions, which were basically not important. "And isn't it good to let others see your strength?" Sasuke, who had the glory of the Uchiha in mind, did not understand what Naruto was thinking at the moment. In his opinion, they should perform well so that others can know how powerful Uchiha is. Uchiha is the #1 family in Konoha. Next, the two went to the training ground together. Xiao Li had already started training. After getting the advanced version of training from Naruto, Xiao Li began to train hard. Although he didn't know why Naruto said that he would expose his true strength, he could only burst out 1/3 of his strength after normal training. Although he was puzzled, Xiao Li still chose to listen to Naruto. According to Naruto, a person must have at least multiple trump cards to survive in this world. After Naruto's brainwashing, Xiao Li also understood the importance of hiding one's abilities. When Xiao Li saw Naruto coming, he stopped practicing and helped Naruto to process the ingredients. Even Sasuke joined in. After the two patted their stomachs contentedly, they began to practice after a while. Naruto summarized and improved the training methods of these physical skills, which can help the body absorb nutrients and better improve strength. And Naruto also told Sasuke how to practice the basic taijutsu that the two of them had practiced before. Sasuke was a little surprised after learning about these training methods, because they were more comprehensive than what his brother taught him. Sasuke also told Naruto the Shadow Clone technique he learned from his brother. Although Itachi was also very curious about why Sasuke wanted to learn this ninjutsu, under Sasuke's constant begging, Itachi still gave this ninjutsu to Sasuke. After all, Sasuke is already 6.5 years old, and he had already learned Shadow Clone when he was 5 years old. After Uchiha Sasuke told him the training method, Naruto once again remembered a voice in his mind, which made Naruto's mouth curl up. Shadow Clone Technique +5. Shadow Clone Technique +4. In the following days, Naruto and the other two continued to practice, and in school, Uchiha Sasuke's grades got better and better, especially in practical combat, where he made great progress. There was another book on Naruto's desk. It was the book on the properties of chakra and detailed explanation of hand seals that he wanted to borrow before. There is even knowledge on herbal medicine and introductory medicine, but these are not very popular and basically only those who want to become medical ninjas will consider borrowing them. Naruto felt that the book Introduction to Medicine was very rewarding, especially the introduction to the human body and meridians. Naruto felt that it would be very helpful for his physical training. Hokage Building, Hokage Office. Maple Leaf, give me your report. The voice of the third generation came slowly. Yes. It was the Anbu who was watching over Naruto. In addition to studying, Uzumaki Naruto has been practicing taijutsu with Rock Lee and Uchiha Fugaku-sama's youngest son. Also, Naruto has been reading a lot of books during this period. He basically reads all kinds of books. Also, Uzumaki Naruto learned a shadow clone technique from Uchiha Sasuke. Sometimes he even skipped classes to practice in the woods. Anbu's report was simple, basically what the third generation knew. As for Naruto and the others' training in physical skills, the third generation does not take it seriously. No matter how powerful their physical skills are, how great can they be? Even if it was Might Guy's taijutsu, in third generation's opinion, elite Jonin was the limit of taijutsu. This does not include ninjutsu. After all, ninjutsu is also considered a type of ninjutsu. When mentioning Uchiha Sasuke, the third generation paused for a moment and said quietly, "The Uchiha clan. They seem to be a little restless recently." The third generation waved their hands, and Anbu instantly disappeared, leaving only the third generation slowly puffing out smoke, which immediately filled the entire office. During this period, Naruto and Sasuke used Shadow Clone to start skipping classes. As long as there were no practical classes, the two would use Shadow Clone to attend classes, while they would go to their secret base for training. During this period, Sasuke's relationship with Naruto became better and better. But Sasuke was still upset about not being able to surpass Naruto. Naruto lost to him every time in a battle. In fact, Sasuke also realized that Naruto obviously had a large part of his strength that had not been demonstrated, because even Rock Lee could slightly suppress him in physical skills. For some reason, Uchiha Itachi felt that Sasuke seemed to have changed a lot recently. Every time they were eating, usually when he just picked up some food for Sasuke, Sasuke would be very excited, but now Sasuke has become uninterested. But Itachi didn't think much about it, because Sasuke seemed to be working very hard recently. Looking at Sasuke's slightly chubby face, Itachi felt a warm feeling in his heart. "Sasuke, I will definitely protect you." "Sasuke, have you lost your appetite lately?" Uchiha Makoto smiled at Sasuke with a sweet smile. Uchiha Makoto has long black hair with two bangs falling on both sides of her cheeks. It can be seen that Sasuke almost inherited Uchiha Makoto's genes. He was wearing a gray shirt and a long skirt typical of housewives. Next to him was a serious young man wearing a Jonin vest. There was no emotion on his serious face. "No, Mom, I just don't want to eat too much." Sasuke didn't dare to tell him that he had eaten at Naruto's place. He wanted to control himself and eat less, but the food Naruto cooked was so delicious that Sasuke couldn't control himself. After returning home, he could hardly eat much. Uchiha Makoto gently stroked Sasuke's head, his eyes full of doting. It was obvious that Makoto liked this son who looked almost the same as her. "Sasuke, as a boy of the Uchiha family, how have you been doing in school lately?" Uchiha Fugaku rarely spoke, and he spoke in the calmest tone possible. "Well, it should be no problem to win this year's top student," Sasuke said after thinking for a while. He said that it was probably because he considered that Naruto would probably not reveal his strength, which made him feel like he was picked up as the chief student. At the end of each year, the school conducts a test to select the top students in each grade. Sasuke didn't think that anyone other than him and Naruto could take the position of the top student. And Naruto is unlikely to compete for the position of the top student. "Well, very good. Keep it up." There was a rare hint of color on Uchiha Fugaku's serious face. Although he still acted quite serious, there was a hint of satisfaction in his eyes, and although he had always been strict with Sasuke, he did not ask Sasuke to be as good as Itachi. In fact, he still liked Sasuke very much in his heart, not just because he looked like Makoto. "Well, that's one of the reasons. Come with me. I'm going to teach you a ninjutsu today." Fugaku put down his dishes and told Sasuke to go out, while Uchiha Makoto quietly cleaned up the dishes on the table. Sasuke followed Fugaku outside, feeling very excited. "I should be able to surpass Naruto after learning ninjutsu. In this world, ninjutsu is synonymous with power. The jutsu I'm going to teach you is called the Great Fireball Technique. It's our Uchiha clan's signature jutsu." Finally, Fugaku quickly formed seals with his hands, put two fingers together at his mouth and blew, and a huge ball of fire was instantly spit out by Fugaku. Looking at the scene in front of him, Sasuke was shocked again. Such power would definitely surpass Naruto. Next, Uchiha Fugaku introduced the specific method of making hand seals to Sasuke again, saying, "Your brother learned this ninjutsu in one try. Next, You try it. Because Sasuke had been secretly practicing hand seals with Naruto during this period, he became much more familiar with hand seals. When practicing physical skills with Naruto, he also inadvertently practiced some chakra control techniques. This makes Sasuke's performance much better than in the original. In the original work, the power released by Sasuke was only the size of a basketball. With such power, he was considered pitifully weak among ninjas. And now, the size of the great fireball released by Sasuke's hand seal has reached the size of a water tank. After Sasuke released the ninjutsu, he looked at Fugaku with anticipation. Fugaku no longer had a cold face like in the original story and said, "Well, it's great to be able to do this for the first time, but you still need to work harder. When your brother first learned this ninjutsu, he released a great fireball that was several meters long." Sasuke was a little disappointed, but when he heard about his brother's achievements, he couldn't help but exclaimed, "Brother is awesome. Keep practicing." After saying that, Uchiha Fugaku left directly. The reason why he was so cold was because of the current conflict between the Uchiha clan and the village. As his son, he had to carry the banner of Uchiha. That's why he was dissatisfied with the performance of Commander Assistant in the original novel. Sasuke was still practicing the great fireball technique when Fugaku walked to the door of the room and said to Itachi, who was watching Sasuke practice, "Come to my room." Arriving at Fugaku's room, they both knelt on the floor. Itachi picked up the teapot on the table, made a cup of tea and placed it in front of Fugaku. Fugaku remained silent during this time. After Itachi finished all this, Fugaku picked up the teacup and took a sip, then slowly said, "Itachi, the impact between the family and Konoha has intensified recently. You are the second Uchiha to join Anbu. I heard that the previous Anbu squad leader has retired." After Uchiha Fugaku said this, he did not continue speaking, but stared at Itachi closely. Itachi was shocked. He knew that this was a warning from his father. As a member of Uchiha, he became the captain of Anbu squad but did not report anything. Although he didn't know where Fugaku got the information, it was obvious that Fugaku was dissatisfied with him now. "Father, the conflict between our Uchiha clan and Konoha is imminent. If our family clashes with Konoha, the entire Konoha will become very weak, and a new round of war may suddenly sweep across the ninja world. Please give me some time, I will definitely find a way for Uchiha and Konoha to coexist." Itachi said sincerely. "Itachi, you should know that the Elder Council has been putting pressure on me recently. We don't have much time. If the time comes when we have to make a decision, I will be helpless." Itachi's heart sank when he heard Fugaku's serious and cold voice. "Father, I'll find a way." Itachi dropped to the ground and saluted Fugaku. "Okay, go out, I'll think about it for a while." Fugaku waved his hand, his tone full of helplessness. How could Fugaku not understand what was happening to his own son? Itachi had begun to rarely even attend clan meetings. I wonder if I was right or wrong in letting Itachi join Anbu. Fugaku feels that he can no longer see through his son. After all, Itachi is not even 12 years old now. He has already activated the 3 Tomo Sharingan, becoming one of the few Jonin-level powerhouses in the Uchiha clan. Not only Itachi, it seems that even Shisui wants to get closer to Konoha, and the war faction even begins to plan a war with Konoha, intending to gain power through violence. But Fugaku knew what a war between Uchiha and Konoha meant. Konoha was not as simple as imagined. Even if the Uchiha won, could they withstand the other major countries? If Naruto knew what Fugaku was thinking, he would know that Fugaku was a rare rational person, but unfortunately, he was not capable enough and was controlled by the 3rd generation. He even hoped to improve the relationship with the village by having Itachi and Shisui serve in Anbu, but he did not realize that this was a complete failure and he lost both the wife and the army. Uchiha Fugaku not only pushed Shisui himself to the Hokage faction, he even pushed his own gifted son to Konoha. As the saying goes, the weaker you are, the more likely others will take advantage of you. If Uchiha Fugaku had shown his Mangekyo, Shisui and Itachi, with the power of 3 Mangekyo, how could Konoha have finally wiped out the Uchiha clan? Itachi was sent to the 3rd generation to be an Anbu when he was still too young. The old fox saw through his heart early on and tried to seduce him, inadvertently injecting the village's supremacy collective consciousness into Itachi, which made Itachi begin to think about problems from the perspective of the overall situation. Over time, they came to think that the thoughts of the Konoha clan they belonged to were too narrow. In addition, the Uchiha clan had extreme thoughts. But not all Uchiha were like this. There was also a large number of civilians from the Uchiha clan, and they were eventually slaughtered. All I can say is that Itachi, Shisui and the entire Uchiha are too naive in front of the third generation, and Danzo, especially when it comes to politics, they are completely manipulated by the third generation. And Shisui was too naive, exposing the distinguished heavenly gods to Danzo. Is Danzo really obsessed with the stability of the village? Danzo just wants the Uchiha clan's Sharingan to help him reconcile the power of the gradual cells to seize the position of Hokage. I wonder how he would feel if he knew that the Uchiha clan he wanted to protect so much died at Itachi's hands. Compared to the radical Itachi, Shisui is obviously more inclined to the peaceful coexistence of the village and the Uchiha. In the end, even if a war breaks out between the Uchiha and the village, Shisui would probably rather the Uchiha defect than be massacred by Konoha. Naruto didn't know about all this, or he couldn't care about it now. He was very excited at the moment because the ninjutsu that Naruto had always wanted was finally researched by him, or it could be said that it was not entirely ninjutsu. After knowing that he was being monitored, Naruto had been trying to find a way to escape surveillance. In the end, Naruto's idea was to use something similar to illusion to hypnosis or control Anbu, who was monitoring him in the dark. After knowing the principles of illusion, Naruto has been experimenting, using his naturally huge mental power. On this day, Naruto successfully developed a move that can be barely classified as an illusion. Naruto named this move Soul Stealing. The principle is to use your huge mental power and slight chakra. After making eye contact with the target, you can use your mental power to control the opponent. You need to replenish your mental power regularly to strengthen control. In fact, Naruto referred to Uchiha Obito's control over Mizukage. The difference is that Uchiha Obito used Sharingan illusion to control Mizukage, so it is feasible to control people with illusion. Naruto, with the help of God's help, developed a method of controlling people with mental power. Naruto didn't need to control a cage-level strongman like Mizukage, he just needed to keep the elite Chunin who was monitoring him under his control. In this way, he can now practice certain abilities that he has not dared to practice. In this way, Naruto's strength will experience explosive growth. Naruto only needs to control the Anbu to pass on his false news to the third generation. Naruto also knew that the third generation would not entrust all their intelligence information to Anbu. For example, the third generation once used the telescope technique to secretly observe Naruto when Naruto was in class. If it weren't for Naruto's strong perception ability, he probably wouldn't have known that the third generation used this trick to monitor him. Thinking that he could finally get some freedom, Naruto couldn't help but smile happily. Naruto, what's up with you? Lee saw Naruto's smile and couldn't help but ask. Xiao Li, this is indeed something worth celebrating. Naruto laughed loudly. He had been living in this environment every day for so many years. If it weren't for the hatred supporting him, he would have been driven crazy long ago. After all, he is not the original Naruto, who can still remain sunny after experiencing so many things. Naruto gradually walked to the edge of the woods, and Xiao Li was a little confused. Come out. Looking at Naruto shouting towards the woods, Xiao Li was a little confused. Could it be that there was someone else in the woods? Anbu hiding in the tree was also shocked. Could it be that Uzumaki Naruto had discovered him? Fire-style chain fireball technique. Naruto used the fire-style ninjutsu that he had been constantly improving. It only had 2 seals, which was almost instantaneous. However, Naruto now controlled the speed of the firing because he was afraid that the ninja in the tree would be killed by this blow. The prerequisite for launching the soul-stealing operation is that the two must make eye contact. Anbu is hiding in the woods, so there is no way for him to make eye contact, so he must be forced out. The Anbu hiding in the tree was shocked. He didn't expect that Uzumaki Naruto really found him and had such powerful strength. How did he become so strong under his nose, and when did he learn the ninjutsu? At this critical moment, she didn't care about so many things. Seeing several fireballs coming at her at an astonishing speed, she hurriedly appeared from the tree. The body replacement technique was activated, and Naruto's attack was ineffective, but the purpose was achieved. The soul-stealing effect suddenly took effect, and she felt as if her head was hit by a hammer, and then she gradually became dazed. What's going on? Xiao Li's expression gradually became serious. I'll tell you later. Naruto looked at the Anbu in front of him. He was wearing a cat face mask and had long purple hair that reached his waist. He looked like a woman. This made Naruto feel familiar, as if he had seen him somewhere. He reached out and took off the mask of the Anbu in front of him. Under the mask was a face that amazed Naruto. Her purple hair was like lacquer, her skin was like jade, and she was extremely charming. At the age of a teenager, she had a face that could topple a country. This reminded Naruto of someone, Uhi Yugao, an Anbu who had appeared only a few times in the original work. At this time, she should be at the elite Chunin level, and with her swordsmanship she should be able to reach the level of a special Jonin. May I have your name? Naruto asked slowly. My name is Mao Yu Yan. My code name is Mao Tu. What is your purpose? My purpose is to follow the orders of the third Hokage to monitor Nine Tails Jinchuriki Uzumaki Naruto. Hearing that this extremely beautiful woman in front of him was actually here to monitor Naruto, Xiaoli couldn't help but tremble in his heart. Xiaoli didn't know what Nine Tails Jinchuriki was, but he understood that Naruto was being monitored, which made him extremely angry. What are the names of the ninjas who swap shifts with you every time? What are their code names? Naruto continued to inquire. There are 2 other ninjas who are taking my place, but I don't know their names. They are all called by code names in Anbu. Their code names are Maple Leaf and Black Tiger. Information about other Anbu slowly came out of the somewhat dazed Uhi Yugao's mouth. She came to monitor Naruto 2 years ago. As for who was monitoring Naruto before that, probably only the 3rd generation knows. Naruto was very satisfied with the effect of soul stealing, but there was still a flaw. Naruto really wanted to use a super illusion ability like distinguished heavenly gods, but this was already the limit. If Naruto now asks Uchiha to do something that she is extremely unwilling to do, the person being possessed by the spell might break free from the restraints directly. However, for now, it seems that it is enough for her to get rid of surveillance. Naruto, your Tempest Kick is so powerful. Xiaoli looked at Naruto who was constantly slashing out air waves, his eyes full of surprise. Without Anbu's elbow restraint, Naruto's training became bolder and his proficiency in the 6 styles, which had been progressing slowly before, began to increase rapidly. Of course, the most important thing is to rely on the ability of God rewards hard work. In Xiaoli's eyes, Naruto is a super genius who can learn anything quickly. I'm only just getting started with shaving, Xiaoli said a little distressed. Naruto did not name the 6 styles Marine 6 styles, but it is still called the 6 styles, which is simple and clear. You're already pretty good, okay. Naruto rolled his eyes at Xiaoli. He had the ability to cheat, and Xiaoli relied entirely on his own hard work and talent. Just take his current physical skills as an example. They are in no way inferior to those of the genin. Even with only the basic knowledge of the 6 styles, Li's actual combat ability is not bad either. After all, he is still in the stage of laying the foundation, and even he is currently estimated to be at the level of a special Jonin. Xiaoli, let me spar with you. Naruto, who has achieved some success, is in a particularly good mood now. That's great. I also want to try out my current level. Hearing Naruto's words, Xiaoli with thick eyebrows and big eyes immediately said that it was called a sparring match, but in fact it was Naruto's guidance to him. Little did he know that every time Naruto fought, a voice would come from his body. Combat experience +5, 6 styles +2. This is why Naruto can become stronger quickly. God rewards hard work and gives Naruto the method to become stronger, but Naruto still needs to continue to hone his skills. Naruto also accumulated combat experience through fighting with Rock Lee, and sometimes even called upon Azuki Yugao to help him train. However, during this process, Naruto always used the perception ability of Kagura's mind's eye. Xiaoli stretched out one hand and put the other hand behind his back. This posture is exactly the same as the posture in which Xiaoli appeared in the original work. The 2 men looked at each other, and for a moment an invisible aura appeared around them. The next moment, Xiaoli disappeared from the spot, and his feet turned into countless afterimages. It was shaving. Tempest Kick. Naruto jumped into the air and kept kicking out crescent-shaped air waves in the direction Lee was coming from. Xiaoli kept dodging Naruto's attacks. He also learned a little bit of Tempest Kick. Although he couldn't kick out Vacuum Wave yet, he was able to increase his leg strength. Relying on the speed brought by shaving, Xiaoli kept approaching Naruto and kept kicking Naruto with the Tempest Kick. Iron Body. Bang bang bang. As Xiaoli continued to kick Naruto, the sound of metal roaring broke out. Iron body proficiency +2. Naruto raised the corner of his mouth and also moved quickly with his razor. Xiao Li's eyes narrowed and he crossed his hands in front of his head, protecting his head tightly. The next moment, Naruto kicked Xiao Li's arm heavily, and Xiao Li immediately retreated, leaving a 5-meter-long gully under his feet. Xiao Li swung his arms and stepped out again. His speed increased dramatically. He spun several times in the air and kicked towards Naruto. A hint of admiration flashed in Naruto's eyes. Use the inertia of rotation to increase his strength. Naruto raised the corner of his mouth and punched the sky. Xiao Li's foot and Naruto's fist collided heavily, forming a circle of shock waves. Xiao Li rolled behind him with the power he received, then stepped on the ground and rushed directly towards Naruto. The two men fought each other instantly, and the sound of their collisions could be heard all around. After a while, they had fought for dozens of rounds. Xiao Li was breathing heavily as he watched Naruto attack him. From the beginning to now, the strength and speed of the celebrities' attacks had not decreased. Iron body. Xiao Li could only use iron body for defense, but because Xiao Li's iron body was too weak, he was directly knocked away. Xiao Li, who was knocked away, lay on the ground gasping for breath. Not bad this time, I lasted 2 more minutes. Naruto said to Li with a smile, walked up to Li and pulled him up. This is youth. Xiao Li gave Naruto a thumbs up, but Naruto thought that if Xiao Li were to endorse the toothpaste, it would definitely be a big seller. Tomorrow is the day to decide the top student, right? Naruto said somewhat meaningfully. Xiao Li didn't notice anything wrong and said directly, yes. The annual chief student battle has begun again. This is just like Naruto's final exam in his previous life. In fact, in this world, exams are also required, and the top student in that grade is called the top student. Are there any outstanding people in your class? Naruto said to Li. At this point, Xiao Li's eyes lit up and he said, well. There's a very strong person, a genius. When Xiao Li talked about genius, there was no fluctuation in his expression, as if genius was nothing special. There's a guy named Hyuga Neji who's very strong in taijutsu and is from the Hyuga family. Xiao Li said slowly. If it were before, Rock Lee would have had emotional fluctuations towards Neji, but now, with the contrast of the super pervert Naruto, Hyuga Neji doesn't seem so special. Even now, Xiao Li's strength is above Hyuga Neji. After all, although Hyuga Neji is very talented, he is ultimately a member of a branch house, and the Hyuga clan does not devote much resources to Hyuga Neji. If Hyuga Neji had been trained by the main family from the beginning, he would at least be a Jonin level being by the time the original story begins. Hyuga Neji was also the first of the 12 to be promoted to Jonin, and the only one of the 12 to die in battle. Naruto couldn't help but hiss when he remembered how Hyuga Neji died to save him in the original story. He was just an object to be won over. He must be very disappointed with Konoha. Naruto plans to find an opportunity to contact Hyuga Neji, but the caged bird is a bit troublesome. If the seal of the caged bird cannot be lifted, Neji's talent may not be fully utilized. It seems that the knowledge of sealing techniques should be put on the agenda. Naruto thought about it, then filled the hole on the ground. He used the earth-style ninjutsu learned from Azuki Yugao. After successfully controlling Azuki Yugao, Naruto gained a lot of benefits from her. However, Azuki Yugao doesn't know many ninjutsu. Her chakra attributes are earth style and wind style, and she usually focuses on swordsmanship. However, Naruto still got a few ninjutsu from Azuki Yugao for free, including wind style Kazekiri, wind style Gale Palm, and wind style Great Breakthrough. They are all very common C-rank ninjutsu. However, there is a B-level ninjutsu, wind style Vacuum Big Ball. It is an upgraded version of wind style Vacuum Sphere. It appeared in Danzo's hands in the original work and its power is quite good. However, it is far inferior to the Rasengan. After the threat of surveillance was gone, Naruto took the opportunity to learn this ninjutsu. After all, there was a method of learning it in the original work. There are also 2 or 3 Earth-style ninjutsu, such as Earth-style Earth Jinbi, Earth Shield Earth Submarine, Earth-style Earth Rising Spear, and an Earth-style Earth Splitting Palm, which is also a very common Earth-style ninjutsu. No wonder it is mainly based on swordsmanship. The power of Azuki Yugao's Crescent Moon Dance is pretty good, and its power almost reaches the level of A-level ninjutsu. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe for more videos.